Let us pray. Almighty God, where you have called us to govern this province, we ask that you help us to make decisions and laws that will be just and will promote the interest of our people. Almagtige God, ons bid dat u gedurende ons vergaderings ons die nodige wysheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou en dat u sal ons help om al ons tekortkominge te oorkom en al ons besluite aan u op te dra. Sikalele ilizwe letu na balo bantu umusili ukulunga kwipondo letu unkosi sikilele i Afrika kina abantwana bayo kokele inkikole zayo Yiniki ikolo i Africa. All this we beg in your name. You may be seated. Honorable members, as has been our practice today, that honorable members will participate in this sitting here in the chamber, but also online, and our standing rules have accordingly been amended. I will directly note and see the Chief Whip.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Speaker, I give notice and move that notwithstanding the provisions of Rule 20, Sub-Rule 1, that precedence be given to the subject for discussion. I so move.
Matter for discussion in the name of the Honourable Lithakong as printed on the order paper. I now recognize the Honourable Lithakong.
Thank you, House Chair. Let me take this opportunity and greet you, the members in the House, members, community in the gallery, and the people of the Western Cape. Speaker, it was exactly on the 5th of May 2023 when Minister Simars was responding to a question posed by member Christians. The minister indicated at the time that the housing backlog stood in excess of 694,000 in the metro alone and more than 336,000 outside the Cape Metro. Speaker, this then meant that the real housing backlog in this province can now safely be estimated to be in excess of 1 million, if not more. Since then, much has not been done to reduce the housing backlog in the province. The annual reports produced by the department headed by Minister Simars paints a very dark and a gloomy picture about the future of housing development in this province, which is often made by failure in capacity and inability on the part of this provincial government led by the Democratic Alliance. Somlomo, allow me at this juncture to provide you with a bit of a background and the stats data on this point. In the period between 2021 to 2023 financial years, the Provincial Department of Human Settlements, which is now the infrastructure, has not been reaching its own set housing opportunity planned targets, which are often been set low to start with. In 2021, Somlomo, the Western Cape planned housing target was just over 8,000, and the department was only able to achieve just over 6,000 housing targets, with an under expenditure of over 37.7 million from the allocated budget. In 2022, Speaker, the same trend followed with a target of just over 8,000 housing units, which could not be reached at the department, only achieving just over 5,000 units, with a staggering housing under expenditure of 217.6 million in the process. At this point, Speaker, and with these figures, I'm sure you can vividly see in terms of where this province is heading. Low targets set, coupled by failure to reach some, as well as failure to spend the allocated budget on service delivery for the people who mattered the most, which is the poor people. In the beginning of the end for this DA-led provincial government
Honorable
becomes
Lisa Kong,
explicit when the housing
please
expenditure
conclude. Your time has expired.
Okay, explicit when in 2023 the housing under expenditure went above 488 million, and I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Lita Kong. I see the Honorable Premier.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker, and thank you very much to the Honourable Lita Kong for this debate, for putting it on the table, for opening up. I must say that I was hoping to see a little bit more around policy, a bit more around delivery, but perhaps just to put into context with what you've raised here, and of course we're under pressure. But if I look at the Western Cape and as a province, I mean, we're the province of hope in South Africa. This is the province that gets things done. This is the province that has the highest rates of provincial GDP growth. We have the highest business confidence. We have the highest average household income, or the best human development index, the highest unemployment or the highest GDP capita, and the lowest unemployment levels, or should I say, the highest employment levels. Of course, at the same time, because we are this province of hope, we are also a province that grows incredibly fast. So we're a province where our population is really outstripping any other province, our population growth, because people want to come and live here because of the province itself. It's a province of hope. This is where you can find a better life. This is where you find opportunities. So, of course, we grew between 2014 and 2025 by 19.6%, and we're almost at 8 million residents in our province. And despite that, we keep on pushing these boundaries. We keep on making sure that we are delivering more and more. And of course, there's a backlog. But also, perhaps thank you to the bad management over the last 30 years of the ANC in our economy, we have very, very low economic growth in our country. And that is really hard because you don't get the commensurate budget. You know, everyone knows in this house that we might be the third most populous province in South Africa, but we still only get the fifth most money. And of course, to really claw back backlogs and build houses, you need to have those budgets. But just think about the housing space and the Conradie Park and the hope that that brings to people. And I'm sure Minister Summers is going to talk about it. Or the latest Leo Loop or Founders Garden. Or I've just come from Swellendam and you have a look at the new development of homes for people in Swellendam. Or just go to George and have a look at what's happening in George or Mossel Bay or in Paarl. Go and have a look at what is happening despite these pressures and very fast growth. But we also have a major problem. We have a major problem because we also have places that are really put aside for making a difference in housing. I'm thinking about the Helen Bowden Nurses Home, illegally occupied, should be made for the use. And we actually need parties to be standing up saying, come, let's get these illegal people out of these places so that we can develop them for social housing, exactly as the plan says, or exactly the same thing for the Woodstock Hospital. Let's actually enable that. And we need you to stand up and support us on making sure that we get this right. Or I think of the city policy now, where people who received an RDP house actually get planning help and approval to put up 6 to 8 units on their property. They can develop an income and wealth over time. These are great policy tools. But that's what I said. I thought what this debate would be is, from the EFF, we have a housing policy X, Y, and Z, and this is what really makes the difference. You've got a long backlog, whatever your reasons are, but have a look at what we are doing. What has the EFF done in their coalition time in Knysna? Where are the mass housing deliveries? Or perhaps in Ekurhuleni, where they actually have the MMC for human settlements, for housing. Mr. Hololo, he is the MMC. Mr. Hololo, he's the MMC. Or what about in Metsimaholo? That's another municipality where you have the MMC and what again? Dololo. Nothing. Zippo. So you come here, you must talk about your policies and how you make them work, but where you are in government, there's nothing happening. We are creating hope in this province. You see the developments, you see the investment, and you see the change. You can see it everywhere you go. So I thank you for this debate. I'm sorry that you didn't put your successes or any of your policy items on the table at all. You read a history lesson out of APPs and annual reports. That's not good enough. You need to get on your game. You're in this game for government. But in this province, please join us. Please join us in
Please
getting
conclude,
the
Premier.
people who are illegally occupying buildings out of those buildings, and let's get District 6 moving. Let's all support each other on getting that going. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Premier. On the hybrid system, I recognize the Honourable Lekker. Honourable Lekker, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Speaker.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise today to debate one of the most urgent matters affecting the people of our province, the housing backlog, the implementation of the Breaking New Ground program, and social housing crisis. The Breaking New Ground policy, introduced in 2004 by the National Department of Human Settlement, was designed to transform the apartheid spatial plan legacy. To promote integrated human settlement, its vision is to remove or move away from mass delivery of standardized RDP houses on the peripheries of our towns, cities, and towards an inclusive mixed home and sustainable communities. Honorable Speaker, the housing crisis in the Western Cape is not simply about infrastructure. It is about the dignity, justice, and equity. It is about whether the working class can live safety and dignity, yet under the DA-led provincial government, this dream remains out of reach for hundreds of thousands of our people. The housing backlog in the Western Cape has grown into a humanitarian disaster. Already in 2016, more than 554,000 households were on housing demand database. That figure has now escalated, worsened by the urbanization and migration, with 683 informal settlements in Cape Town alone, 186 of which were established under COVID-19. Many of these are in floodplains, underwater power lines, and in unsafe areas without proper services. Families in Khayelitsha, Gugulethu, Atlantis, George, and rural towns live with the daily risk of shack, fires, flooding, and crime, all while being excluded from the province's economic lifeblood. And yet, Honorable Speaker, in the face of this humanitarian crisis, the DA-led Western Cape government, through its Department of Infrastructure, which is tasked with human settlement, has failed to deliver. It is no accident that human settlement no longer exists as a standalone department in this province. The DA has deliberately downgraded the importance of housing by collapsing it into infrastructure. Nationally, human settlement is recognized as a core driver of transformation and dignity. Here in the Western Cape, the DA has turned it into an afterthought, just a desk buried under roads, bridges, and other projects. And the results are plain: underspending, mismanagement, and a housing crisis that deepens daily. These failures include, in the 2024 to 2025 financial year, the Western Cape was allocated 1.6 billion in the Human Settlement Development Grant and 382 million in the Informal Settlement Upgrading Partnership Grant. By August 2024, the Department of Infrastructure had spent only 33% of its HSDG allocation and a disgraceful 11% of its ISUPG allocation. The department forfeited 125 million in ISUPG funds simply because it failed to submit a rollover request. Money which was meant for the poor was lost forever. Between October and December 2024, there was a sudden and suspicious 543 million spending hike, a clear case of fiscal dumping, not genuine delivery. Much of it was wasted on unauthorized items such as security services and unaudited subsidies outside of the housing code. This is not just poor governments. It is a betrayal of the people's trust. The failures do not end there. 17 housing projects were found to have been implemented outside of the approved business plan. Expenditures were illegally incurred in non-accredited municipalities. In violation of Section 16 of the Division of Revenue Act, adjusted business plans were weak, contradictory, and non-compliant, and the department even failed to submit a revised plan when required by National Treasury. Instead of taking accountability, the DA-led Department of Infrastructure chose to threaten litigation and issues press statement on selective outrage. They cry foul when funds are rightfully stopped and reallocated, yet they have benefited from reallocations in the past without complaint. Honorable Speaker, we must ask, who is being served here? Is it the families in Khayelitsha still waiting for a house? Is it the backyard dwellers in Mitchell's Plain paying higher rent for unsafe rooms? Is it the communities of Imizamo Yethu and Hangberg who have seen housing projects stall and appear as stillborn? Or is it a provincial elite more concerned with optics than delivery? The ANC believes that housing is a constitutional right, not a privilege. The Breaking New Grounds program was designed to create integrated, sustainable, and dignified communities. Yet, here in the Western Cape, it has been undermined by political arrogance, underspending, and deliberate failure to release well-located land for social housing. Tafelberg land saga remains a stain on this government. Instead of using the private housing, the province sold it off to protect the privilege and entrench apartheid spatial planning. This exposes
Honorable
the DA's
Lecker,
true
please
agenda.
conclude.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The ANC stands with the people of Hangberg, Seapoint, Khayelitsha. We will not allow the DA to escape unaccountability. Housing grants are not the province's money, they are the people's money, and we will ensure that they are spent to uplift the
Thank
poor,
you.
not waste irregular spending. I
Thank you, Honorable Lecker. Also on the hybrid system, I recognize the Honorable Petrus.
Thank you, Speaker. Honorable Speaker, today I rise to address one of the biggest scars of inequality in our province, the Western Cape, housing backlog and the increasing social housing crisis. For decades, our people have been promised dignity through housing. Yet, for many residents of the Western Cape, that promise remains nothing more than a slogan. The reality is stark. Families are waiting for decades on a housing list. Young people are being born, growing up, and starting families of their own, while still living under the same conditions, the informal settlements that their parents were promised they would one day leave behind. Achtbare Speaker, die behuisingskrisis gaan nie net oor statistieke nie. Dit gaan oor mense. Dit gaan oor die ma van 3 in Khayelitsha wat 25 jaar op die waglys is. Dit gaan oor die bejaardes op die Kaapse vlakte en die duisende agterplaashuurders in Elsiersrivier, Worcester en George. En wat sien ons in plaas van oplossings? Ons sien grondbesettings omdat mense se wanhoop hulle geen ander keuse laat nie. Ons sien korrupsie in toewysings en projekte wat stil staan nog voordat die eerste baksteen gelê is. In terms of our strategic plan, the acceleration of housing delivery and the shortage of land are challenges. When last did we speak to the National Department of Public Works and Infrastructure for sustainable land? We are not doing enough for first-time home buyers to get loans and assistance, especially for social housing and the middle income group. We definitely need a new housing delivery model for the Western Cape. Honorable Speaker, enough is enough. Let this House commit to intensify the delivery of houses and give our people dignity of a roof over their heads and the reason to believe that government still works for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Petrus. I recognize the Honorable Dr. Mbombo.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, members of the House. We greet you in this month of Amanina, Waitindi Mbogoto, Watinda Bafaz. You struck a woman, you struck a rock. And Ngosimawawa for sponsoring the debate. Deputy Speaker, South Africa's Bill of Rights, Section 26, states that everyone has the right to have access to adequate housing, and state must take reasonable legislative and other measures within its available resources to achieve the progressive realization of this right. Also, housing is a concurrent function between national, provincial, and local government with the Housing Act, clarifying who does what. National government develops national housing policy and allocates funding and resources, while the province and municipality do the other part. Deputy Speaker, the national government must take its share of accountability for the failures to address housing crisis in South Africa, just as municipality must account for being slow in developing bulk infrastructures for housing development. South Africa's housing backlog remains one of the country's most pressing socio-economic challenges. Since 1994, the democratic government has delivered more than 5 million housing opportunity, but this declined sharply since 2009, creating a widening gap between the supply and demand. Deputy Speaker, addressing South Africa's housing backlog requires a fundamental shift from the current housing unit delivery approach to comprehensive human settlements development. The 3.4 million national household backlog represents both a crisis and an opportunity for spatial planning. Success depends on the coordinated government action, private sector engagement, innovating funding mechanisms, and strong community participation. This will not only reduce the housing backlog, but also transform South Africa's spatial economy toward more inclusive, sustainable human settlements that fulfill the constitutional right to adequate housing for all citizens. Outdated legislation and lack of integrated planning frameworks hinder the shift from housing delivery to holistic human settlements development. Progressive realization of the right to access housing includes developing precinct-level plans that integrate housing with schools, clinics, and jobs. It is imperative to build social infrastructure ahead of or alongside the housing units. Rapid urbanization, population growth, and shifting household structures have further intensified the need for affordable, adequate housing, leaving 100,000 without dignified shelter. The construction industry suffers from low absorptive capacity, material cost inflation, and limited innovation, reducing the ability to scale delivery. The industry is also affected by the rise of construction mafias and fraudulent procurement practices, which delay the projects. Hence, community participation is the key. Deputy Speaker, the BNG housing budget cannot keep pace with the backlog and competing priorities in national spending. Hence, a large-scale acceleration is unlikely. We must involve as much of the private sector as possible to invest in social housing, incentivize the private sector participation in affordable housing through tax breaks, risk-sharing models, and co-financing schemes. The DA commends the Department of Infrastructure for establishing alternate models to finance infrastructure, including housing, beyond relying on government. In closing, Deputy Speaker, a shift from housing delivery to sustainable human settlements is long overdue. We can't still be debating the bean counting of housing units. We should be now focusing on adopting a holistic approach ukuhlala kwabantu, that includes the dignity. We need to bring human into the human settlement, and we remove the Housing Act to be a Human Settlement Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Umbombo. Speaker 6 is neither in the House nor on the online platform. I now recognize speaker number 7, which is the Honorable Murray.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, housing is a very emotional topic, and many a time it is abused, used for political expediency in the run-up to local elections, when title deeds are handed over for photos. But sadly, Speaker, in the Western Cape, many people who are waiting will die before ever realizing their right to adequate housing. Underspending is the order of the day at the moment, and that must be rectified. It must be corrected. Corruption must be rooted out. Now, when it comes to prioritizing people for housing, Speaker, the question must be asked, is the system fair? Should the first come, first served basis not apply in the system of allocation of houses? Or is it just a myth that that is being done? The system must be fair, Speaker. Secondly, there's lack of transparency in the system, adding further to the anger and frustrations of many who are not sure when they will ever be placed. Now, in the Western Cape, colored people have a historic connection to the Western Cape. They've been living here all their lives. They've worked here. They will be buried here. But there are many of them overlooked for housing in the Western Cape. Federal autonomy should be given to the Western Cape, not just powers over policing, but also matters of this nature when we have to decide on housing and what defines adequate housing for our people. Economic migrants to the Western Cape are welcomed, but they must be prioritized for social or rental housing, not ownership to begin with. In closing, Speaker, we call for a commission of inquiry or a joint commission by the Minister of Infrastructure and Local Government to ensure that those beneficiaries of houses, ownership houses, do not rent it out and move back into informal settlements to gain economically. We thank you, Speaker.
Honorable
Thank
Murray.
you.
I recognize the Minister, Honorable Minister Seleku.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, honorable members, Premier, kabinet collega's, onze gasten in die huis, die galery en online. Het is nogal snaaks dat vandaag se debat deur 'n lid, honorable leader of the EFF, Litakong, gevra is. Ja, het is baie snaaks inderdaad. Because Deputy Speaker, she is the very same member whose party cheers as mense onwettige grond gryp. Yet today she comes here and wants to act innocent. Deputy Speaker, the fake politics are on full volume today. Now let's get it real. Context is sleutel en dis belangrik. And the context of housing is clear. Human settlements are not only about bricks and cement, honorable members. Dit gaan oor mense se hele lewens, oor waardigheid, oor hoop, oor toegang. That is how we see it as the government of the Western Cape. And might I say, the best run regional government in the world. We don't come here to point fingers. We don't sit back and blame. Nee, ons rol ons moue op, ons spring in, en ons kry dinge gedoen. So the honorable member may ask, hoe doen julle dit? Let me break it down for you, honorable member. Through you, Deputy Speaker, you cannot talk about housing without talking about mobility, because mobility is the heartbeat of dignity. It is not a nice to have. It is survival. Take our Golden Arrow bus services. Elke liewe dag klim 230 mense op hierdie busse. Van Langa, Khayelitsha, Strand, Mbekweni, Mitchells Plain, Nyanga, Grassy Park, and I can go on and on and on. And with all those buses, doors shut down. With those buses, doors open. Deputy Speaker, while families wait for housing, and here I must pause and commend the work that is done by our Honorable Minister of Infrastructure, Minister Summers, driving innovation in housing delivery under difficult conditions. People still need to go to work, go to school, and go to clinics. That is why we roll out nearly 10,000 job seeker travel vouchers. Imagine this, a young man in Delft and a young woman in Khayelitsha doesn't have to choose between a meal and a bus fare. They get to that interview, they land that job, dat is mobiliteit wat waardigheid teruggee. And outside the metro, look at George. Ons Go George diens vat elke dag 21,000 mense rond. And we are not standing. You know, we are already expanding to Uniondale, connecting more people to the economy. Kom ons praat nou die kaal waarheid uit young speaker. Behuising gee skuiling en mobiliteit gee toegang. En sonder toegang is daar geen ware waardigheid nie. Housing is a long-term vision. However, transport is a right now solution. It keeps hope alive. It turns waiting into working. It turns surviving into winning. So yes, honorable member, you want to govern one day. Here's a free lesson to you. Jy kan nie bou op chaos nie. Ware leiers bou op orde, op oplossing en op dade.
Honorable Minister, can you please take your seat? I recognize the Leader of the Opposition.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, can the Honorable MEC please speak through you and not directly? I understand the points raised by the Honorable Lita Kong has really stirred up, so he must get personal. So can he not be personal? I know they're both from Grabouw, so they can
Thank you.
discuss those matters afterwards, but he must
Your
speak
point
through
is
you.
taken. I see the Honorable Unkondlo online.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I just wanted to ask whether the MEC is willing to take a question. I'm not sure whether he's still governing. We have not seen him for some time. If he's talking about teaching the people a lesson about governing, is he still an MEC anyway?
Thank you, Honorable Unkondlo. Minister, are you prepared to take a question?
Deputy Speaker, if she was in the house, yes, but she's not here.
The member is not prepared. Members, and for future reference in this particular sitting, I will again caution members to speak via the chair. Honorable Minister, Leader of the Opposition.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, sorry for intervening again, but I don't want an impression created that this is not a hybrid sitting. This is a hybrid sitting, so members who are not physically present in the House have full participatory powers. Thank you.
Honorable members, as per my opening remarks, our rules have been amended in order to accommodate those that are in the chamber, but also those that are online, and they have full rights to fully participate. Honorable Minister, I will now see the minister. Is this a new point of order?
Chair, the member, the MEC indicated that if Honorable Nkondlo was here, he was going to take the question. Now that we have made a ruling to say that being online and here is the same, kindly make a ruling on that question, probably then confirm that indeed he's going to take the question.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I read that as preference from the minister. So, Minister, you have 46 seconds remaining. You may continue.
Deputy Speaker, let me reiterate, you cannot build on chaos. True leaders build on order, on solutions, and on actions. That's the difference between the DA and the rest of other parties, which we call opposition. Thank you very much, Baidangi Ngos.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. On the hybrid system, I recognize the Honorable Brinkhuis.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Honorable Deputy Speaker, we are a province where in some areas there are more drug dens and surveillance than schools and recreational facilities. We are a province where during the cold and the wet winter months, sewage water flood into the homes and informal settlements. We are a province in which shack fires in informal settlements have become a norm. We are a province where farm evictions are executed without providing decent homes to the evicted families, or the expropriation of land to farm dwellers on which they have been living on for generations. We are a province where social housing complexes, as in the case of Reitebach, have been sold to private developers, leaving residents, including older persons and people with disabilities, homeless. We are a province with not only a huge housing problem, but also a segregation problem and an ongoing apartheid spatial development. The shortage of housing in Cape Town is critical, and large populations are living in substandard conditions. In fact, under inhumane conditions, there is a need to establish affordable housing which should be well located, not on wetlands or farm or far removed from the economic hubs and workplaces. There are people spending more than 40% of their migrant incomes on transport to work. The deep-rooted spatial inequality must be addressed, as well as the exclusive and profit-driven property market, who adds to spatial inequality. The province is not looking at viable solutions to end the housing crisis, such as releasing land close to workplaces, support micro developers developing in the townships, and to upgrade infrastructure in these areas. Despite the city saying...
Please conclude, Honourable Member.
Thank you very much, Honourable. Despite the city saying the city works for you, is only working in selective areas in your leafy suburbs. Infrastructure in the townships remain a huge challenge. People live in sewage spills, lack of waste removal services.
Thank you so much.
Cases, thank
you so much, Honourable
to 7
Brinkhuis.
families living on one plot. I thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Brinkhuis. I recognize the Honourable Christians.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I think everybody and every political party agrees that we have a major problem when it comes to housing. And the figures vary. The figures vary to say the backlog is 600,000, 700,000. But we all know that there is a huge backlog when it comes to housing. But Deputy Speaker, let me say that with the influx and the population growth that this province is experiencing at the moment, the Western Cape government will never be able to deliver housing opportunities to the demands of our people. And that's why the ACDP believes that there should be a partnership between government, the private sector, communities, get role players in to discuss this massive problem that we are experiencing. Secondly, there should be an open discussion, whatever you want to call it, if it's a dialogue between national, provincial, and local government, the private sector, communities, in order to see how can we navigate this way forward. And we also know that people is coming in daily and the demand just gets greater and greater. But Speaker, as the previous speaker also said, the problem that we have, many people live far away from home, and that's why the ACDP is asking for housing opportunities to be closer to the home. But then you also have unemployment, and you have, no economic growth, very, very slow economic growth. So when a person moves into a house, a person needs a job. So we will have to look, government will have to look at this as an approach and say, how are we going to push this forward? To give a person a house with no income, it's also a problem. But this is a serious problem, and we need a urgent national, provincial, local dialogue to sort out this. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Christians. I now recognize the Honorable Wessels.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, the Western Cape government, under the leadership of the DA and through the Minister of Infrastructure, is fully aware of the housing backlog in the province. That is why the Department of Infrastructure keeps on doing more with less, despite severe budget cuts from National Treasury and the ongoing challenge of land invasions in the province. Speaker, let's give a clear picture. National Treasury has cut the Western Cape housing budget by 300 million rand, despite approving the Department of Infrastructure's business plan well in advance. Speaker, this reckless decision has frozen payments to projects across Cape Town, across George, Knysna, and smaller towns across the province, threatening hundreds of housing opportunities and delaying delivery for families who have waited for too long. Yet, Speaker, the Western Cape has shown what delivery looks like. Despite these cuts, the DA-led Western Cape government continues to invest more than 1 billion rand every year in housing subsidies for the poor. Speaker, that is more than 5.8 billion rand over the last 5 years. We have accelerated projects in Indekraal, Pakketberg, and Gansbaai. We are handing over homes. We are issuing title deeds. We are breaking ground on major mixed income projects, such as Founders Garden and the Lulu Precinct. Through the new alternative and blended finance framework, we are unlocking private development funding to build even faster, reducing our dependence on the national government's shrinking fiscal envelope. Speaker, this is why the DA once again calls for the urgent reform of the national housing funding model. Speaker, South Africa needs a system that provides long-term certainty, that rewards good governance, and that empowers provinces to plan effectively. Speaker, land invasion remains another major challenge. Projects like the Velmoed development near Elsie's River has been delayed for years because of unlawful occupants. These invasions don't just stop bulldozers, they stop families in informal settlements moving into safe and dignified homes. We must confront this directly. The rule of law must stand, because every delay robs the dignity of people who needs it the most. But Speaker, let us also be clear. Housing delivery is not just about building houses, and it is about readdressing the legacy of spatial apartheid. Too many South Africans still live too far from jobs, transport, and opportunity. That is why the DA-led Western Cape is driving transit-orientated development. That is building homes closer to economic hubs and closer to transport corridors. Projects like the Leeuloop is an example of a well-located, affordable housing that addresses the legacy of spatial apartheid, known as spatial injustice. Another example of housing projects of this nature is Founders Garden, the largest inner city housing development yet, with more than 2,600 units being delivered under this DA-led Western Cape government. Speaker, that is what doing more with less means. It means protecting the dignity by moving beneficiaries into real homes, not false promises. Speaker, it is unlocking delivery through innovative finance and strong governance, even when national funding collapses. Speaker, it is building inclusion by placing housing closer to opportunity and breaking down the walls of apartheid planning. This
Please conclude, member.
This DA-led government is ready to deliver more homes, ready to protect dignity, ready to unlock opportunity, but we cannot do this alone. Urgent reform of the national housing model is essential.
Thank you, Honorable Wessels. I now recognize the Honorable Heron.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, listening to this debate makes it clear to me that that side of the House has no cooking clue what's going on with housing. Absolutely no clue. We are not doing more with less. We're doing nothing. Breaking new ground, the name given to the National Free Basic Housing Program, is ironic in the Western Cape because very little ground is broken when it comes to housing. According to the Minister of Infrastructure, there's a person in Drakenstein who's been waiting 62 years for a house. The delivery numbers are not great. Only 3,046 houses were built in the last financial year. It will take us 226 years to get through the waiting list or the backlog. In fact, Deputy Speaker, the waiting list or the housing demand database is a myth. It is nothing more than 688,000 names of people who've applied for housing. There's no real ranking of persons on that database, and the so-called housing demand data does not inform where the little that is built is actually located. For a government that brags that data-led decision-making, the use of technology and innovation, informed decision-making doesn't make its way to housing. Housing is not their priority. The crisis is not just bricks and mortar, it's also about spatial justice. Communities remain trapped in apartheid geographies, pushed to the peripheries, disconnected from economic opportunities, and reliant on expensive transport. This is 2025, not 1975. The Western Cape has land available to develop free basic housing, social housing, and affordable housing, but we have not seen any significant development from the Windy administration. As we saw earlier, the projects they will point to were conceived, planned, and built by the Zille administration. Meanwhile, families wait decades on the housing so-called waiting list, and backyards become mini cities with people living in overcrowded and unsafe conditions. Finally, Speaker,
Please
unless the
conclude.
province can take bold steps to integrate communities where opportunity lies and actually build houses, the housing backlog will remain a permanent scar. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Heron. I recognize the Honorable Unkondlo.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, allow me to share with you from Wittenberg PCO in Ceres, where I am at this point. Just a meeting we had with the Minister of Rural Development and Land Reform with the farm workers. And this is just an excerpt of a letter they've written to the minister. They say, the Westernberg Justice Coalition, which is the organization of farm workers here, is devastated by the brutal evictions of farm worker families from farms in the Westernberg region. Despite the many years of service and farm workers having multiple generations of families on the farms are evicted under inhumane conditions and plunge into homelessness. Children of farm workers who face eviction have education and schooling disrupted and delayed. Farm workers are forced to live in informal settlements with limited space and services and often face violence and hostility from communities. I raise this, Speaker, to just give a wake-up call to the Premier who boasts here about economic growth of this particular province, calling it a province of hope, which is a province of hopelessness to the poor, as a province that actually mimics slavery, colonialism, and apartheid because it builds this economic growth at the back of misery of the poor people and farm workers. Honorable Deputy Speaker and honorable members, housing is not simply about bricks and mortar. It is about dignity, stability, and opportunity. There are over 688,000 households in our province that are still waiting for a home. Some families have been waiting for more than 30 years. Many have died on the waiting list. This is not just a backlog, it is a crisis of dignity. Today, I rise and it is to question whether the provincial government whether the provincial government is doing enough to deliver within the framework of the Breaking New Ground program and through social housing initiatives. Let us look at the pace of their delivery. I must also mention to you that the message from the community of Maritzburg, who have last seen houses at the time the ANC was governing the Western Cape, they are here listening and pleading for their plight to be homeowners. Currently, there are families of about 15 occupying one-bedroom house, and this is the pace of housing delivery in this province that the Premier boasts about and claims it's a province of hope. In 2019-2020, the province delivered 8,038 homes. By 2024-25, that figure dropped to just 3,046 BNG units and 1,331 FLISP units, only 4,377 homes in total. That is a mere 0.6% of the backlog. At this pace, it will take 157 years to house everyone on the list. That is not delivery, that is abandonment. Why we must insist a house is more than a house, it is an economic tool. Housing projects can be engines of job creation, training and empowerment for working class families. Each house built should mean jobs for local youth, opportunities for women, and the development of small contractors, not just profits for big construction firms. This is a province of hopelessness to the poor, and that can be found also in the case of George building collapse, which exposed cheap labor practices. Construction companies, which often rely on cheap migrant labor, sidelining local unemployed youth and women who desperately need work. The tragedy exposed not only poor oversight, but also the exploitative labor practices in the building industry, which is not mentioned here, and everybody wants to only speak about the construction mafia, because this is also another mafia that must be exposed, as we listen to some members telling us that we must involve private sector and also incentivize the private sector. Nobody wants to unmask how the private sector is exploiting the very poor in this particular province with these economic opportunities. This matter for housing, this matter of housing delivery cannot be detached from labor dynamics. If housing projects enrich contractors whilst excluding local communities from work opportunities, then housing delivery deepens inequality rather than solving it. In the city of Cape Town here, we are seeing a crisis where the average house in this province costs about 1.6 million, yet most households can afford not more than 600,000. The housing market studies confirm a severe shortage of homes in the 300,000 to 600,000 range, while high-end homes remain oversupplied. This is why the gap market is growing and why backyard shacks are mushrooming. Cape Town alone accounts for over 350,000 of the housing applications. Communities in Khayelitsha, Danun, Philippi, Mitchells Plain, and Grabo remain trapped in overcrowded informal settlements, often without secure tenure, proper sanitation, or access to safe transport routes. At the same time, social housing projects in well-located areas such as Woodstock, Salt River, and Observatory have stalled or been resisted. The well-publicized Tafelberg site in Sea Point is a glaring example of the provincial government's reluctance to release prime land for affordable housing. Instead of breaking new ground, we are re-entrenching old patterns of exclusion. Whilst the BNG framework emphasized social and rental housing, the Western Cape has struggled to deliver at scale. The Social Housing Regulatory Authority, SHRA, has pointed out that the province lags behind Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal in both the number of social housing projects approved and the units delivered. Social housing is critical because it targets households earning between 1.5 and 15,000 rand per month, the so-called gap market that is too poor to access bank mortgages, but too rich to qualify for free BNG houses. The Western Cape fails to prioritize this sector, instead condemns the thousands of working families to remain in informal housing housing far from their places of work. Honorable Deputy Speaker, the BNG policy gave us a roadmap to transform our cities and towns into inclusive, integrated spaces. Yet in this province, the housing backlog grows, social housing stagnates, and land in well-located areas remains locked away. The province of hopelessness to the poor, a province where South Africans of low income are reduced to an economic immigrants in their own land and racialized on the basis of the hierarchy of their racial demography by parties like the DA. And we have heard now here that they are economic migrants and they must actually, be last in consideration. And this is done by members who dishonor the oath of membership of the Constitution that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you for your submission, Honorable Nkondlo. We now recognize the Honorable Kasim.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the history of Cape Town is a history of conflict, a history of removals, and a history of displacements. And what started in 1652 when foreign vessels arrived on the shores of this beautiful province is exactly a history which shouldn't be forgotten, because our people should never forget not only who they are, but also how our misery all started here, leading to what we continue to experience in this province today. Deputy Speaker, the history of this land is a history of a certain racial group who were foreign at the time, acting with greed, and who undermined the hospitality of the peaceful host. They did so by using guns and every weapon on their disposal to take what does not belong to them. Deputy Speaker, since then and until today, that specific race continued to occupy suitable parts of this land offered by this town, and much to the exclusion of others who do not resemble their skin color or race. Deputy Speaker, over the years, such exclusion became a guiding policy of successive governments which firmly adopted and institutionalized a policy of exclusion. One does not have to look too far in order to pinpoint elements of resistance against inclusion. Not too long ago, a provincial government and city led by the DA frowned upon a request to turn Tafelsberg site into an exclusionary housing development project, which would respond to the provision of spatial planning. Deputy Speaker, those running the provincial government and the city within the DA did not hesitate to spend millions in legal fees in order to fight the idea of Tafelsberg property being turned into an exclusionary social housing development. They fought this idea all the way to the Constitutional Court until sanity prevailed as a result of a firm and resounding public backlash. Deputy Speaker, despite the provincial government making a U-turn with plans to now turn the Tafelsberg site into an affordable social housing development, there are still elements within the DA and this government who want to contradict those plans by now calling for the site to be turned into an old age home. Deputy Speaker, the housing backlog in this province is also exacerbated by a lack of proper and decisive policy on spatial planning and the provision of social housing in the inner city. Whilst the social housing development projects involving Leo Loop, Founders Garden and Presswich are steps in the right direction, Deputy Speaker, and who target around 3,500 mixed development social housing units, it is still not enough when one looks at the current housing backlog, as well as the rate in which our people need these houses, which should be affordable and close to the areas of business activity. Deputy Speaker, as the EFF, we join the chorus of those that demand parking lots owned and operated by the provincial government to also be reconfigured and utilized to start new mixed property developments, which will also incorporate affordable social housing. In conclusion, Deputy Speaker, if those who lead this provincial government are true to the sole and main endeavor of exclusionary spatial planning, then they should not hesitate to redevelop those parking lots as well into inclusionary social housing units. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Kasim. I recognize the Honorable Minister, Minister Simmers.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, Premier, fellow members of the Executive, online and present, members of the Provincial Parliament, and above all, those law-abiding beneficiaries still waiting on the waiting list. I'm very glad that we are having this debate today. And the reason I'm so glad is that it gives us all the opportunity and the platform to correct misinformation which has sadly also been spewed here this afternoon with cold, hard facts. And I have to apologize to you, Deputy Speaker, in advance, because you will hear me repeating facts that I have been trying to get across to our colleagues in front of me so many times since the beginning of this year. It seems that they either cannot grasp the information or that they deliberately distort the truth for political gain. I tend to think that it is the latter.
Deputy Speaker, possibly the biggest distortion of the truth peddled in various forms by the opposition is that the Western Cape government receives increased grants but delivers fewer houses than the number delivered 10 years ago. They are misleading the public, Deputy Speaker. The truth is that the Western Cape government is not receiving even close enough from the ANC-run National Department of Human Settlements to serve our people. It is their minister who is delivering fewer housing opportunities. The Western Cape government is by no means receiving its fair share. And as is the case with all infrastructure, are my national counterparts considering that the demand for housing is increasing because people are streaming to the only last province which gives them hope? Are they thinking about the rising costs of material, or of transport, or even of labor? Clearly not, because on top of this, our budgets are cut year after year. So today, I again try to settle the distortion of the facts around these budget cuts. No, we did not give back any money. It was taken. And it was taken without any logical justification. On the 5th of March 2025, 300 million rand of our budget was unilaterally cut by the National Department without considering the impact it has or will be having on the many beneficiaries who are now waiting even longer for their houses to be built. But we are fighting this, honourable members of the House. On their desks now lies an intergovernmental dispute. And believe me, they are worried because we did our job. We delivered. So it is the ANC whose policy is still stuck in 1994, if you listen to them today. It is the PA who has no policy but makes a lot of noise. It is the NCC who are falling apart. And it is good whose three-page policy example is Knoflookskaal. It's their prime example. These are the parties standing in the way of the legal beneficiaries of the Western Cape and their right to adequate, dignified housing opportunities. And to the opposition members of the Standing Committee of Infrastructure sitting here today and online, please go to our website, acquaint yourselves with the criteria for qualifying for housing opportunity, and above all, learn how to apply and teach your constituents how to apply. Please do that as soon as possible so that we can stop the spread of misinformation around the Western Cape Housing Demand Database. At recent meetings, up until even last night, Honourable Deputy Speaker, I met with communities such as Mfoleni, Blackheath, Easterrivier, and others, where we could see how people are being misinformed about the housing database. People are being told that they will be kicked off the waiting list and that we will pick and choose who is on the list. This side of the House does not govern like the ANC in other provinces. We do things right, within the law, and we are transparent in how we do it. For this reason, we are hosting a verification drive in September, specifically on the Velmet project to ensure that law-abiding beneficiaries have access to their rightful housing opportunities. Not because they are chummy or of this or of that councillor, or some of them are connected with so-called business forums. They are supposed to be on the waiting list. Our priority as the state must be those law-abiding residents who followed the correct route to get onto the list. Not queue jumpers, no one else, the law-abiding ones. To the EFF who asked for this debate. Again, members, I apologize, but I'll have to repeat myself again. Social housing is not the same as BNG or the former old RDP program. We have moved on, people. Kom nou EFF, wees op het, magtig man. Social housing is an affordable rental option for households earning between 1,850 to 22,000 rand per month. And the development and management of social housing is undertaken by accredited social housing institutions. Deputy Speaker, I pray, and I seldomly pray in this House, that today is the day when the facts finally sink in. But we can only hope. Despite the unwillingness of the national government to give us our fair share and fund us efficiently, despite the National Department cruelly slashing our budgets, despite unlawful invasions and occupations, and despite all the misinformation, this provincial government is moving forward. I'm proud to say that the social housing sector in the Western Cape has performed well over the past financial year, outperforming all other 8 provinces. In total, out of over 2.9 billion rand social housing project pipeline, which reflects 5,845 units to be delivered across our province within the next 3 years. And what a difference this will make. But Deputy Speaker, to implement and to pull this off, we need funding from the Social Housing Regulatory Authority. Funding they've had to admit they no longer have. What is our national department going to do about this? So Our pipeline is ready, honorable members. This provincial government under this premier is ready. But I must say, it seems like our national partners at the national level are nowhere to be found. And they have to start playing their part. There is a lot at stake. We can create so much more opportunities, deliver so much more if we actually do work together. But this is the Western Cape government, ons kerm en kreme, and we are moving. You can recall the Premier and I recently launched the inner city housing development in Cape Town, the biggest inner city housing development to date, which is part of our social housing pipeline. At over 2 billion rand, the Founders Garden mixed use inner city development will yield in total of just over 2,600 housing opportunities. These will be real homes within walking distance of economic opportunities, within walking distance of the Cape Town station and the My City Centre just around the corner from where they will live. Founders Garden was unveiled a mere 100 days after the Premier and I launched the Leeuloop housing project that will yield 840 housing opportunities. And it won't be the only one we announce, the next one, under this Premier's legacy, not the former Premier's. We are moving, Deputy Speaker. In terms of delivery of housing opportunities, context, however, does matter, something our opposition fails to understand. Between 2014 and 2019, the Western Cape received around 2.3 billion rand a year for housing. Since 2019, our allocation has declined every year down to its current 1.688 billion rand for 24-25. Yet despite this, and including our quarter 1 25-26 data, we still delivered 57,458 opportunities to date, which includes building the house program, the BNG program, the first home finance program, sites, services, and individual subsidies in a fiscal environment where we have lost close to 2 billion rand cumulatively compared to, if we compare to the 2019 baseline, had it been sustained. In real terms, after inflation, today's budget is 30 to 35% smaller than it was in 2019. Fewer rands, but more efficient delivery is still being executed by this DA-led government. That is the real DA difference. Deputy Speaker, remember that many of these sites have fallen victim to land invasion or attempted land invasions. And many of these projects were disrupted by so-called business forums and construction mafias who are deliberately working to derail our projects for personal or political gain, to which end we had to reallocate over 1 billion rand towards safeguarding our sites to be able to deliver. This is 1 billion rand that could have built hundreds and hundreds more houses for the people who are so desperately in need of housing opportunities in this province. My colleagues across the floor, Deputy Speaker, easily point out delays and backlogs. Why don't they help us? Why do they not raise their voices against unlawful invasions and extortion and illogical budget cuts? Hulle bekke is still. But as I've said, we are moving. In terms of informal settlement, Deputy Speaker, the Western Cape Department of Infrastructure has adopted a transversal, people-centered strategy to accelerate and simplify interventions in partnership with municipalities, but most importantly, our communities. In the past financial year alone, 43 projects were targeted for funding, amounting to 382 million rand, with 11 already in implementation, delivering 1,672 service
Honorable Minister, can you please take your seat? I recognize the Honorable Chief Whip of the official opposition.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I would like the MEC to withdraw the way he spoke to the opposition now. He said our backer is still. That is an insult. We have mouth. Can you withdraw what he just said now about the opposition? Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Barnes. It's not a direct point of order. I will allow the Minister to conclude.
Delivering 1,672 service sites, 145 more than the projected target. Over the current MTF period, we are projecting a total of 1,974 service sites, with over 800 expected in this financial year alone. These upgrades include access to clean water, sanitation, electricity, and in many cases, also security of tenure. Given the limited availability of relocation of land, our province is also intensifying the use of super blocking and reblocking approaches. This ensures incremental improvements where people live, avoiding the costly delays of greenfield developments. Deputy Speaker, through this strategy, we are not only improving the physical environment of our informal settlements, but also protecting families from disasters such as flooding, storms, fire, and health risks, while opening pathways to dignity and opportunity. To conclude, Deputy Speaker, I actually wish to thank the EFF for giving me the opportunity to reiterate the truth and the facts today. I am so pleased that there are members in this House who understand that the province is shortchanged, that the work we do is being misrepresented or sometimes sabotaged, and that we can unlock many opportunities if we all work together. And I hope that this is the takeaway from today's debate, that if we work together, we can shape a future where our residents are safer and healthier. Where should we receive a budget that speaks to our growing population?
Can you please take your seat?
Thank Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I wanted to check whether the MEC is prepared to take a question because it suggested that Madam Zille has no legacy in the province.
Yeah.
Are you prepared to take a question?
After the sitting, thank you.
The minister is not prepared to take a question. There is 1 minute and 5 seconds remaining.
Where should we receive a budget that speaks to our growing population? Beneficiaries can receive their rightful homes and where they can live prosperous and dignified lives. But now, to our law-abiding beneficiaries following our sitting today. Through every cut and every hurdle, this provincial government will keep running the race with endurance because we seek to deliver for you, something which only a DA-led government can do. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. That concludes the debate on this particular subject as brought forward by the Honorable Litha Kong. Honorable members, in terms of Rule 197, we now proceed to the interpellation as printed on the question paper. I now recognize the Honorable Minister, Minister Simmers.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker, and through you to the member. The A part of the question, the development of Founders Garden site has been complex as a result of a number of factors, including its position in relation to the Artscape precinct, significant shifts in the economic climate, and changes to procurement processes. The announcement of the project as part of the Cape Town Central City Regeneration Program in 2010 marked just the start of the enablement phase of the project, much of which has been dependent upon decisions which rest with other spheres of government and departments. The enablement phase has included various intricate processes such as, number one, the removal of a title deed restriction limiting the use to a garden and a park and incidental activities. This necessitated going through parliamentary processes. Secondly, the design of a development framework, precinct plans, various development impact assessments, and ultimately rezoning. A review of the highest and best use based on funding limitations to the Artscape precinct and on the identification of housing as a public need. Amending the original rezoning conditions in order to align them with the highest and best use referred to in the previous point. The subdivision and consolidation within new property boundaries, which processes include the registration of a servitude in favor of the City of Cape Town to protect access to the pressurized sewer. The negotiation and finalization of stakeholder and user agreements. The drawing up of a financial feasibility study and a legal due diligence around the contract mechanism and procurement framework. And the development of a developer procurement process and the design of the relevant documentation, including a request for proposal and the relevant sales agreement. As indicated in my opening remarks, many aspects of these processes march to the pace of institutions outside of the control of my department. The B part of your question, the compulsory briefing was held on the 14th of August, and the project is currently out to tender with a closing date of the 29th of October 2025. The developer procurement process is scheduled to be completed in the first quarter of 2026, subject to unexpected procurement delays. Construction of the full development is expected to take 3 to 4 years from the date of development contract awarded.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I recognize the Honorable Heron.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, let me just go back to the Minister's request in the previous debate. We asked for members of the opposition to assist to deliver housing where there are occupied buildings. And I want to say that I will volunteer to assist, but the ministers must show up. We know that the DA is scared of dialogue, but if we're going to solve this problem, they have to overcome that fear and engage with those communities who are occupying buildings. Back to this debate, Deputy Speaker. This government is acting less like a serious administration and more like a Hollywood stuck in a creative crisis. Instead of producing bold new projects, we get endless reboots of the same tired story. This very same piece of land, Founders Garden, was announced for development in 2010 as part of the Central City Regeneration Program. And it was re-announced in 2016 for social housing, and then again in 2019 when Cabinet approved it for release. And now here we are in 2025, and suddenly we expect it to stand, clap, and act like this is a blockbuster premiere. Why, after years of fanfare, photo ops, recycled announcements, has there been no concrete progress on delivering homes for people who need them? The latest reboot promises 1,476 social housing units for households earning less than 22,000 Rand a month. That sounds good on paper, but these numbers have been floating around for years. Cape Town has one of the worst housing backlogs in the country. Hundreds of thousands of people are waiting on a list that moves slower than this project has moved in 15 years. In fact, the current count is roughly 688,824 people. So these social housing units barely make a dent in the deficit. The public doesn't need another staged public event. They need construction cranes, bricks, and roofs over their head. This isn't just about one piece of land. This is about a pattern of delay, of smoke and mirrors, of government failure. Every time the people demand housing, they get an announcement. Every time they demand dignity, they get another speech. And every time they demand action, they get another photo op. So I ask again, are we going to see all the projects from the City Regeneration Program paraded out every few years like lame Hollywood remakes? Or will this government finally stop selling posters and actually make the damn movie? Because we already have the Provincial Office Precinct remake, aka Lulop. Now we're just waiting on the rest. Because, Honourable Deputy Speaker, after 15 years of talk, the time for trailers is over. It is time to deliver the movie. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Heron. I recognize Honourable Wissels.
Honourable Speaker, the Founders Garden project represents a vital opportunity not only to revitalise the central city and strengthen our cultural precinct, but also to create jobs, to attract tourism, and to stimulate the economy. I'm encouraged that this development is now moving forward under the Minister's leadership, and I look forward to seeing it become a flagship example of how the Western Cape delivers urban regeneration benefits to all of our communities. Minister, watter spesifieke meganismes of planne word deur die Founders Garden projek geïmplementeer om die groeiende vraag na goedgeleë, bekostigbare behuising in Kaapstad werklik aan te spreek en hoe sal die breër gemeenskap daarby baat? Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Wissels. I recognize on the hybrid system the Honourable Lekker. Honourable Lekker. Honourable Lekker on the online platform.
That's okay.
You may proceed, Honourable Lekker.
Deputy Speaker, can you hear me?
You are audible. You may proceed. Honourable Lekker, are you able to unmute and proceed? Honourable Lekker, are you able to unmute and proceed? Honourable members, as you are fully aware that members have the responsibility of ensuring that they have a stable internet connection, I will make one last call. Honourable Lekker, are you able to mute and proceed?
Can you hear me now, Deputy Speaker?
You may proceed, yes.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The so-called Founders of Garden Route project is yet another example of how the DA government does not know how to get the things done. Let us remind this House that this project was first spoken about as far back as 2010 under the Cape Town Central City Regeneration Program. That was 15 years ago. Today in 2025, the DA is making announcement as if this is something new. This shocking delay of more than a decade has cost the people of Cape Town dearly. While the DA was dragging its feet, the people of Cape Town were left in the backlog, and which has grown over 600,000. Families still waiting for homes. That is a humanitarian crisis. Yet this government continues to move at a snail's pace. The MEC must tell us why this project has been delayed for over 15 years and exactly what the government has yet to do. Within the city, our people are desperately needing houses, but also what is sounding very alarming, we do not have or not want another failed experiment like the Conradi development, where the lofty promises did not match the reality of ordinary families. If the DA could not get Conradi right, what guarantees do we have that Founders Garden will not also stumble? The ANC demands more than just one shiny announcement. We want similar projects across the city, including the following site, Tafelberg and Somerset Hospital site, both which have to be stalled for over years due to DA's lack of political will and its obsession with protecting the interest of the wealthy. The top yard parking...
Honorable Lekker, please conclude.
Thank you. I would like to understand exactly what needs to be done without ensuring that the private deals are not made behind the scenes. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Lekker. I see the Honorable Heron.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, this land could have changed lives. Land in the very heart of the city, yet it was left idle while working class families were pushed further to the edges. And it's not just Founders Garden. It's Tafelberg, Dorp Street, Government Garage, Pickwick Street, Salt River Market, Pine Road, Newmarket Street. And just today, the Mayor of Cape Town re-announced the release of the Ruland Street fruit and veg site. It was announced in 2017, and again by the city and province in a ceremony on the site in February 2002. Tafelberg's first feasibility study was conducted in 2011. And yet I attended another meeting 2 weeks ago about planning the development of affordable housing on the site. 14 years later, and you're still talking while desperate people are still fighting. No bricks have been laid. And fighting costs money, time, and livelihoods of people. Every delay comes at a direct human cost. Behind each stat is a child who grows up believing that the city has no place for them. Behind each delay is a grandmother who's been on the waiting list for 60 years and dies waiting for a home she was promised. Behind each broken commitment is a government that seems more concerned with announcements than delivery. The people we're talking about are the backbone of our society, the nurses, teachers, cleaners, police officers, service workers who keep the city running. They're not asking for charity. They're asking for fair access to safe, affordable homes close to where they work, study, and live. Every year of delay is another year of displacement, another year where children spend hours commuting instead of learning, another year where single mothers pay most of their income on transport because they can't afford to live where their jobs are. Speaker, if we cannot prioritize housing for the most vulnerable, then what exactly are we doing here? The Founders Garden site could have been a model for spatial justice in Cape Town. Instead, it's become a case study in political procrastination. It is time this government stopped hiding behind press statements and ceremonial launches. Stop treating social housing like a campaign prop and start treating it like the human right that it is. And if this government cannot deliver on this, then they must make way for those who will. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Heron. I recognize the Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And again, there are certain processes within which we need to respect. It falls within the national department's fray. It falls within the relevant local government, which is the city of Cape Town. Something the honourable member Heron is supposed to know because he was a MACO member. At some stage, he did serve on the planning component as a MACO member in the city of Cape Town. Out of the 8 steps I responded to the Honourable Heron, 5 of those are either at the city of Cape Town or they are with the relevant national department or body. It does not vest with my department, and this is not some movie, Honourable Deputy Speaker. These are the facts. This is a law-abiding provincial government, and we do need to follow the process of the law. Otherwise, Founders Garden could have been a Knoflokskraal, and we all know who the initiator of Knoflokskraal was. We all know how that one is panning out in Theewaterskloof, because it did not follow the process and the rule of law. Because that was political expedition ahead of a local government election. To raak hulle saak wim, Deputy Speaker. We can't allow that as a provincial government, where it's our land. We respect the rule of law. And once all these processes have been concluded, something the Honourable Heron is well aware of, because again, he was a MACO member at the city of Cape Town during this period that he is referring to. The Premier and I did not go and rehash or re-announce a project. The final conclusion to the end of this legislative journey is what we could announce. The tender went out, a call for proposals. 10 years ago, the process was only started in terms of what is needed to enable this project. And in 2010, again, that was the start of the enablement force. So for 15 years, a lot of processes has had to go its course. And judging how some of the national departments and bodies who we have had to work with operate, it makes sense why it takes so long due to their inefficiency, not this provincial government and my department. Honourable Wessels, this is why when we announced Founders Garden in its form in which it is going to market, we have moved from just social housing, which was the original intent 15 years ago, but life goes on. New programs were introduced in the human settlement space. That's why we talk of a mixed use development. It still focuses on social housing, but with SHRA not being able to commit to specific funding for a number of our projects in our pipeline. A new funding model, a new development model needed to be conceptualized, which talks to mixed use, the open market component, the private ownership, and the social housing component, while also introducing a form of retail to ensure that it is sustainable. And that is the reality. The DA Western Cape does not make movies. The DA in this government does not make one-man band movies. We govern by the rule of law and we deliver. Every project that I have announced in my previous term and in this term under this proud premier, we have delivered in time, on budget, within that term. Not in 10 years, not in 15 years, within a singular term. And this will happen with all of our inner city developments as well. So this is not a movie. But do follow us and be part of the solution. Don't encourage invasions of buildings and land. Be part of the solution instead of being part of the problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. That concludes the interpellation as put forward by the Honourable Heron. Honourable members, in terms of Rule 202, we will now deal with questions as printed on the question paper. I once again wish to advise honourable members that once the Honourable Premier or the Minister has started the reply to the oral question as printed on the question paper, honourable members must use the chat facility for the sitting of the House to indicate that they want to ask a question, or for those that are in the House with the raise of their hand. There are 4 opportunities for follow-up questions by the honourable member who has posed the initial oral question as printed on the question paper will have the first opportunity for a follow-up question. Thereafter, other honourable members may use the remaining opportunities to ask a follow-up question. As per the question paper, question 1, I recognise the Honourable Premier.
Thank you very much,
Honourable Premier, are you able to take us on your seat? I see the Honourable Deputy Chief Whip.
My apologies. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. The honourable member from the NCC was absent earlier on. Does that mean question 5 is then withdrawn? You can please get the indication. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
I will revert back before that particular question. I see the Premier.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and to the honourable member for the question. After consulting with the Department of Police Oversight and Community Safety, I can say that A, the Western Cape Safety Plan is currently in review to ensure alignment with the objectives, outcomes and focus areas of the Provincial Strategic Plan 2025 to 2030. The revised safety plan makes a key distinction between violence reduction, which focuses on stabilizing and responding to immediate crime and violence prevention, which aims at breaking cycles of violence through long-term interventions. Central to the safety plan is the issue of data-driven decision-making and evidence-based practice to direct resources where they are most needed. It includes 3 key objectives, which are underpinned by several outcomes that stem from the focus groups held with residents of the Western Cape in the development of the Provincial Strategic Plan 2025-30. The objectives and outcomes are as follows. Objective 1, integrated violence prevention. Objective 2, safe and secure communities and infrastructure. And Objective 3, effective and responsive law enforcement. And then B, I'm informed that at present, the plan is on track to be presented to Cabinet in September. I will endeavour to ensure that this House is kept informed of developments in this regard. What I can also say with regard to the plan is that we held the Provincial Premier's Council earlier this week in Swellendam, and with all municipal managers and all mayors present, as well as the provincial government. And of course, it was also rolled out there as part of the consultation process. Thank you.
I recognize the honourable member who posed the question.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Premier for the answer. There's been a lot of focus on the violence reduction part of the plan, the boots on the ground component. But what has the Western Cape Provincial Government's departments done with the violence prevention part in the 6 years that the plan has been implemented? Thank you.
Honourable Premier.
Thank you very much, and thanks for that follow-up. So obviously in the Violence Prevention Unit, which I'm sure the honourable member is aware of, it is based within the Department of Health, but is about the whole of government. So it is programs like the First 1,000 Days, Safer Schools programs, etc. The current or latest ones, for example, is Planet Youth. This is quite an unbelievable task that they set themselves. They went about consulting young scholars in our province, young learners. They went to 123 schools, interviewed 50,000 young people. That project has had a pilot rollout and now a much bigger rollout. It was launched not so long ago in Mitchell's Plain. There's the Safer City Collaboration Agreement. There's the, he's spoken about the violence prevention. I'll get to more detail for him. The multi-staker partnerships, which looks at ABTs across the region. The programs, for example, like the parenting programs that are run by DSD, the programs linked to the taxi plan and looking at reducing violence in engagements with the taxi industry. We have the youth unemployment and intervention programs, the substance abuse and alcohol programs, the gangsterism, organized crime intervention programs, there's the GBV violence programs, there's the climate change and crime oversight and overlay programs, there's the public infrastructure and safety programs, there's the access to firearms programs, And then there's the secondary public transport program that I spoke of, and that's primarily in the metro. There is also a whole range of programs that are run in the rural areas, plant and marine, life poaching, burglary and theft on farms, and tools and equipment, continued socio-economic programs, the influx of undocumented foreign national programs, so obviously the safety plan on each of these programs, there are ones that will be reviewed in this process. And then, of course, there are other ones that are being launched all the time. I've just spoken about the latest one, which is the youth programs and Planet Youth, which is, I think, a really big program around violence prevention, especially in those focused gang-related areas. And then perhaps the last program, I did speak a little bit about it last time, but or the latest violence prevention program, which is the Kulisa Care program. Because we know that, and I don't need to go into detail, I'm sure the honourable member listened to it, the program about stunting and underweight children. And if you follow their life path, you will find that because of those formation years without proper nutrition, you actually are setting those young people up to fail. They end up to be more susceptible to drop out of school, to not reach their full potential in the schooling system. And then that is a pipeline into crime. And I think this program now is also one of those interventions that really I am super excited about as a prevention program. Of course, violence prevention is a whole raft of programs that takes a long time. I mean, we could talk about the SWIMS app and the data that's coming out of the SWIMS app with our social development teams, and then how we use that data to understand. And it's very interesting to see already as it's being developed, the impact of the social workers and the pressure that they're under on 13 to 18-year-olds. And then that shows you the number and knows you need to focus in. That is, again, in violence prevention and young boys at risk, how you zoom in onto those programs to make sure that we minimize the long-term impact on crime where you are using it for violence prevention.
I recognize the Honourable Marais.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Thank you to the Premier. Premier, I just wanted to know, in terms of your comprehensive strategy, and one of the that you touched on was the violence prevention. Now, the youth are at the forefront, unfortunately, of a lot of crime that's taking place in our province. And I wondered whether your plan will also incorporate networking with youth, such as the youth military cadets that has been existing for a few years now, doing fantastic work, also where they address the mental well-being of young people, boys and girls, and whether that networking is in place with that particular organization, as well as the retired police reservists, whether they would also be part of your comprehensive plan, and specifically in fighting crime and preventing violence. Thank you, Premier.
Thank you very much, Honourable Marais, for the question. I mean, obviously, the youth programs that stand out immediately are Chrysalis, Year Beyond, the pay intern programs, which are youth that have they've finished matric, but they're not in employment, they're not in further learning in universities or colleges, and they are also susceptible in this. And I agree absolutely. Youth has got to be a big focus, and perhaps in the earlier part of my answer, I didn't put some of those programs in. On the marching, I presume it's the cadets you speak to. It's the marching bands. There definitely is work that goes into those marching band support, and specifically in the city. I know that in those wards there is definite support for those marching bands, because I agree if it's the same, if I understand the same part of the question. When it comes to the reservists, the reservists is an issue that we really have also been trying to get right with national government. I mean, I've even got to the position where I've made budgetary allocations available to them to say, we will actually put some money towards the reservists. But that has not been taken up. I also agree it is an area that needs support, but it also needs national intervention because it's got to go across into the police stations themselves. And of course, this is part of a further discussion, and that is devolution of power, how we can play a much better role and stronger role in decision making in deployments, because the deployments are still very, very skewed. We do not deploy officers and resources to the high crime areas. In actual fact, when you look at the data, it's the opposite to that. But I must say I'm encouraged. I have, since the new acting minister has been put in place, I know that the city has, and I have also written to him requesting a meeting. And I was encouraged from some of the comments that he was making yesterday. He was in the Eastern Cape yesterday, but he was making some comments around policing, and he's open to the kind of discussion that we've been putting on the table for a long time on let's have a look at the ability to use data and use new technologies and use different policing methods and mechanisms, like we are doing through LEAP and like we are doing through the city and province partnership, which actually shows that these things can work. That he's open to that discussion, that we can, and I'm looking forward to that meeting.
I recognize the Honourable Walters.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. My question to the Premier is, how is the under-resourcing of the SAPS, who has the national mandate at the end of the day, impacting on the Western Cape's future plans to combat crime, especially considering the dynamic and increasingly organised nature of crime?
Thank you very much to Honourable Walters for that follow-up question. You've got to try and prepare yourself for there's as much data and detail as possible for follow-ups. And on this one, I mean, over the past 6 years, SAP's Western Cape budget allocation has grown at an average of 3.1%. This is below the inflation rate. So they have the same problem that we have. And at national cabinet level, you can ask anybody that is at that level, that when I pitch for education funding and extra funding, when I pitch for extra health funding, I also always pitch for extra police funding, even if it only goes to a national level at the moment, while we're having a discussion on how management can change. And that's quite interesting, because with a 3.1% increase annually on average over the last 6 years for policing at a national level into the police budget, who has the responsibility. By contrast, law enforcement budget in the city of Cape Town increased by not 3% or 3.1%, by 34%. So really trying to step into the gap, trying to make sure that because everywhere, everybody's feeling at this level of crime that is increasing. So, definitely those resources are not being put in place. I always say, where's the highest crime rates? Well, surely we should have the best deployment and the best resources deployed to those areas. Well, the data doesn't show that. And on manpower resourcing, we have a 1 to 429 police to population ratio. That's the average. So just think of 429. So if you are in a high crime rate, we hopefully have more police officers to population. So that number should come down, 1 police officer to every 300 or 400 people, not 429. But if you have a look at that resourcing again, and you just randomly look at the highest crime rate areas, Mitchell's Plain, it's not to 400, but to 600. Samora Machel to 838, to Philippi East, 435, to Gugulethu, 874, to Khayelitsha, 638, to Harare, 773, 760 in Kraaifontein, Umfuleni, 581, Nyanga, 635, Delft, 784. So that is something that can be fixed with a stroke of a pen. They can just say, tomorrow, you are all reporting to that precinct, and all these resources are going there because that's where the highest crime rates are. That hasn't happened year after year after year. So really, it is disappointing that the resources don't get deployed to the right place, and the province as a whole does not get the resourcing that it needs to make sure that we are being effective when it comes to policing and fighting crime. And that is why, as a province, we've had to step in more and more. As municipalities, we've just come from the municipalities now this week where we got all together. They're having to step in more and more. Safety is a big issue across our province, and the resources just not there.
Honourable members, for the sake of transparency and before I list the last speaker, I have noted those that put up their hands on the online platform, but also those in the chamber. Directly after the fourth person raised his hand, which is Honourable Syed, I then noticed a hand from the Honourable Heron, together with a hand from the Honourable Nkwensu. In that regard, the final question goes to the Honourable Syed.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. The Premier's government of the Western Cape has consistently highlighted, as he has now as well, highlighted the safety plan as a data-driven intervention to address violence and crime. Now, in light of we've just heard this morning, the recent stabbing at the Noah's High School in Hout Bay, where learners protested this morning because they feel unsafe. Is the Premier able to indicate what this data shows about the actual impact and effectiveness of the safety plan, particularly in improving school safety? Thank you.
So obviously the question from the Honourable Premier was a bit different to this follow-up question, and I'm very happy that we supply that exact data to the Honourable Member. But the Honourable Member, who obviously as the leader of the opposition is also quite seized with education, and that's great. And he will know himself that there are many schools where you will see law enforcement deployment by LEAP officers and law enforcement officers in the city of Cape Town, specifically to those schools. Why? Because SAPS, run by National, is not adequate to offer the safety of our citizens, whether in school, in hospitals, on the street, where they live. They are not able to do the proper job. That's why we have to step in. It is a massive, massive failure of the ANC. And really, 30 years, and there's been no change. And we know that when our constitution was first written, it was actually a devolved policing system. But we also know at that stage it was a very volatile KZN, and the idea was temporarily to pull that power to the center. But that's also the mindset of the ANC, control that center, whether it's the courts and the criminal justice system, whether it's the policing, the investigation, all of those key powers. Sorry?
Honourable Premier, please speak to the chair. Honourable members, order. Honourable members, order. If you have a particular question, there is a platform in order to raise that questions. Honourable Premier, please proceed.
Thank you. The Honourable Van Vogel obviously is feeling a bit aggrieved here. She must put the question in of whatever she wants to know. I will gladly answer that question. And really, it is about data. It is about data and effectiveness, measuring and getting those outcomes after you've measured whether you've done something that's made a difference. And these other projects that I've spoken about now, what Minister Wenger is busy with now on the Kulisa care, we will measure that data and we will see what difference. She set herself a bold target within that framework. And if we can move the number to what she set herself, well, quite frankly, we will start to do things that other parts of the world will look at us and say, wow, how did you get that right? We're not scared to take on these things, and we're not scared to really work hard at it. But the other thing is that we also ask the Honourable Said and the members on the other side of this house to, at the same time, when they keep asking the same question over and over again, we ask them to also read the reports.
Honourable Premier, please take your seat. Is that a point of order?
Yes, on a point of order, the Premier is misleading the House. This is the first time you can go to the Hansard. It's the first time ever since 2019 that I've asked a question on the safety plan in this House. I've not asked at all a question on the safety plan. So I must not mislead the House.
Honourable,
thank you.
I see the Honourable Chief Whip.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, if the Honourable Syed would like to make a substantive motion, he's welcome to do that, but he cannot stand up and accuse the Honourable Premier of misleading the House. He needs to follow the rules of order as set out. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. Now, I do not need to echo what you have just indicated. Honorable Premier, please proceed.
Thank you very much. Perhaps also just to add to the Honourable Saeed's point that he just raised, he must actually go and have a look at Hansard and see exactly the question that he did ask, because he didn't ask about the safety plan. He asked about violence in schools and data linked to violence in schools. So he must also be careful about how he responds. But I'm responding to him now about data and the safety plan and crime in our province. And the members on this House that keep asking these questions, I don't think they ever go and read the reports. Don't read my reports. Don't read the department reports. Don't read the reports that we table when we come to the standing committee. Read the other reports that are independent outside of us. Because of course, and you can ask any question, you can call the standing committee, you can full data on all of these things. But go and have a look at what works for hotspot patrols in Cape Town promoting high performance policing. Go and have a look at this report. This is a report done by the Institute for Security Studies internationally, funded by the Hans Seidel Foundation and the Bavarian government. Go and read this report and the criminologists, international criminologists that are actually measuring the work that we are doing. Because that's what you must do. You must get yourself and your data that you measure, but ask other independent peers to measure you as well. Have a look at this one. This one is an unbelievable one. And of course, this one is funded by the EU. It's the ENACT, Enhancing Africa's Response to Transnational Organized Crime. This one is also the ISS, but this is also by Interpol and the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. They're the ones that produced this report. This report is about an intervention in Grassy Park, where all that happened is they funded the positioning of a legal person inside the police station. The police first pushed back against it. They didn't want a lawyer inside their police station. But what's happened is this resource is now trusted by the police because the lawyer inside the police station, funded by an international organization, is helping with docket writing out the dockets and the accuracy of the dockets and making sure those dockets are prepared for court. Because how many times does a docket get to court and the judge looks at this, they just throw it out because it's incorrectly. Now in Grassy Park, those dockets are now correct. What's more is the public are now starting to trust the system because they know when they go to lay a charge, when this lawyer's there, their detail is taken properly, it is put properly into a format that there's going to be a consequence in court and there's going to be a conviction. This is an unbelievable partnership as part of the safety plan. Something really great. Has any of you ever even thought to read the report? I bet you the answer is no. You don't believe in looking at the independent reviews of our data. You don't believe.
Please speak to the chair.
You keep on talking against what's happening here, but the numbers don't lie. And that's why I'm looking forward to the discussion with a new police minister. And I'm so happy that he's happy to engage on these kinds of subjects. We're going to put this on the table because together we can only fight crime. And this part of the House should actually start getting on side when it comes to fighting crime. And then perhaps last, of course, this question was put on the table by the Honourable Heron. He always comes with all of his suggestions, etc. I thought I'd go and have a look at the policy of his political party. I thought that would be a really good place to start because this House is a place for alternatives, for why don't you try this if this is not working? Of course, you've got to do the oversight, but you can also say, I've got a great idea. And you bring a great idea, we can actually have a look at if we can get that idea going. And the Honourable Heron has a hang of a lot to say about crime. He's forever attacking the LEAP officers and the program. He's really on this mission. It's like his sole mission. And it's interesting. So I went to go and have a look at his policy on it. And you know, this is the policy. It's got 1, it's got 2, it's got 3, it's got 4, it's got 5 pages in the policy of his political party. Well, the first page is just fancy pictures and a heading, and it's got no detail on it, so that's not really a policy. The second one is an item. So it says, how can good fix safety and crime? What is the problem? How good will fix the problem, and what will work, and sign up. So that's not really a policy, that's just an agenda. So now we're getting into the meat of this policy. There are 8 bullet points on what the problem is, and then a nice picture. And then there are 4 bullet points on how they're going to fix crime. And then it says, will it work? There's a big yes, it will work. I mean, and then of course the last page you can't count because it's just join our party or something. So really it's a bit light, Honourable Heron. We need to see a bit more depth in here. And again, as I said, let's bring ideas here. I've never heard you put a constructive idea on the table to say, put this in place, let's try that. I've never heard you once say, well done on the program that is working. Not once.
Honourable Premier, please
Thank
take
you
your
very
seat.
Speaker.
Deputy Speaker, I'm concerned that the Premier is directly responding to Honorable Hero, and therefore he's beginning to be personal.
Honourable members, I was just about to again inform the Premier to speak through the chair. I have taken the comment made by the Premier now that that particular question has now been concluded. Is that correct, Premier? Honourable members, I now see the Honourable Chief Whip.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Speaker, the question to Minister Berdal has been withdrawn as agreed by the member and the Minister.
Honourable members, I recognize the Honourable Minister, Minister Lund.
Good afternoon, Honourable Deputy Speaker, members of the House. To the member Kaiser Philander on Part A, what is the total number of reported incidents involving attacks on social workers in the last year? We had a total of 54 incidents that were reported during the period 1 April 2024 up to date. The second part, you ask, of these incidents, how many are currently under investigation by the South African Police Service? All 54 incidents were reported to the South African Police Service for investigation. The second part, the question is, what are the details of these attacks? What are the details of these attacks classified as a priority crime by SAPS? These statistics include vehicle hijackings and attempted hijackings. I do not know the details on what was classified as priority crimes. Then, if you look at Part C, you ask which locations or regions did these attacks occur. In Khayelitsha, there were 9. In Harare, 8. Mfuleni, 8. Gugulethu, 5. Lingulethu and Lingulethu West, 4. Mitchells Plain, 3. Nyanga, 3. Philippi, 3. Blue Downs, 2. Kleinvlei, 2. Bellville, Delft, Gordons Bay, Kuyasa, Langa, Makaza, and Kales River, 1 each. And then D, how many social workers have resigned as a result of being attacked? The answer is none. Thank you.
I recognize the Honourable Member that posed the question.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Through you to the Minister Lund. Minister, what measures? Thank you very much for the response in that regard. I was asking the second part of the question in relation to what General Patakile has informed the committee the last time that they were invited to the committee in terms of these crimes being prioritized on provincial level, but we will definitely follow up on that. From your side, Honourable Minister, through the Deputy Speaker, what measures have been implemented by the Department of Social Development and SAPS, if you perhaps can indulge us, to ensure the safety of social workers in those high-risk areas? Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. So
I firstly just want to alert members of the House that I won't be able to go into all details, because by sharing all the details, we will be putting our workers at risk. So I will be sharing those details that I are able to share in the House. The department will continue to attend safety forums and work with law enforcement forums to report on all risks and follow their guidance where it's provided. In the meantime, Department of Social Development, our staff, we are avoiding entering high-risk areas at certain times, or staff do not go into certain high-risk areas. Residents in these areas are asked to come to offices for meetings with social workers as far as possible. Thanks to the collaboration with the South African Police Service and the Department of Police Oversight and Community Safety, officials from these departments also alert us if there are any safety risks we should be aware of. We also have removed all identifying information from our vehicles. In certain high-risk areas, security measures at offices and facilities have also been upgraded to protect our staff. It must be noted that most hijackings of staff have occurred when they are on their way home in government vehicles. So we have asked staff to avoid taking these vehicles home as far as possible. Furthermore, a number of the hijackings have been of minibuses bringing staff back from shift work at the facilities. We have arranged for safe drop-off points in communities to reduce the risk. This also speaks to the bigger picture. We have staff willing and able to serve our residents in all the communities, but unfortunately, due to the lack of safe environment, we cannot always serve residents as quickly as we want. And therefore, we also want to reiterate the call made by the Minister of Police Oversight, Community Safety and the Premier, so that we have more resources allocated to the South African Police Service based on the data that's available, so that we can then act more quickly and more efficiently when clients in these high-risk areas are in need of help. Thank you.
Honourable members, I've not seen any indication on the online platform. In the House, I see the Honourable Kaiser Philander.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Through you, Minister Lund. Thank you for following up on the various measures. The last time we engaged, you said that the department will be implementing some measures, and from what you say, it has been done. So thank you very much for that. Through you, Deputy Speaker, what support services, Minister, example for counselling, relocation, or legal aid if need be, are being provided to social workers who have been victims of these attacks? Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. The amazing thing about this department, and I say it's sometimes I'm jealous of my colleagues here in front of me, Minister Mayne and Minister Wenger, on the size of their budgets that they've got. But then other times I appreciate that we're sometimes a lean and mean machine, that they treat one another as a family. So when our staff do fall victim of this, we have the supervisors, we have the chief directors, all the way up to the HOD. Whenever something happens, we get alerted of it, and our staff is there to support one another. So when you're sometimes more lean and mean machine, you treat one another more like a family, and that support is provided to our staff when they go through these trauma of being on the receiving end of crime when they're just trying to do their job. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I now recognize the Honourable Minister, Minister McKenzie.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Can you hear me clearly, sir?
You are audible. Please proceed.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you for the question, Honourable Walters. The possibilities of leveraging sporting success for job creation and sustainable club development in the future is definitely significant. According to the 2018 Western Cape Case for Sports Research, sport and recreation are a major economic contributor and employment creator in the Western Cape. The study, based on an extremely conservative estimate, found that sport contributed over 8.8 billion rand annually to the Western Cape's GDP and supported more than 60,000 jobs, direct and indirect, across various sectors. The report also notes that this impact is likely underestimated, and then sport should be viewed as an important economic sector. The research suggests that major opportunities exist to position sport and recreation as a sector with a comparative advantage for increasing economic growth, tourism, and related employment. Job creation possibilities arise from various aspects of the sport and recreation industry because our province has a competitive edge in hosting large-scale events which act as a pull factor for tourism and the hospitality industry. Furthermore, cross-sectorial linkages exist with other industries such as catering and hospitality. And the study also found that a critical mass of minority sports sites holds substantive economic power and potential, and that emerging types of sport like online computer gaming and social networking are growing rapidly. The research also highlights that the recreation field, although largely underestimated, contains significant informal economic potential and holds promise for employment and income generating activities. The B part to the question when it comes to leveraging sporting successes for sustainable school and club sport, the case for sport, as the research was called, research provided several insights. The study found that dynamic organizations are managing innovative and sustainable programs with good relationships with government and funders. A club development program is such an initiative funded through the Mass Participation and Sport Development Grant and with DSACs, where clubs are assisted in getting established and capacitated to ensure their functionality and longevity. The aim is to assist clubs to get established and once established, for them to get self-sustainable. The research also suggests a significant increase in the number of registered sport participants, which contributes to the economic base of sports organization. For example, the number of registered participants increased by 21.5% for the same sports categories between 2013, 2014, and then 2016, 2017 surveys. Categories were included. The MOD program, which involves some 85,000 school children, is successfully increasing youth participation, with the number of participants being talent identified and receiving special support. This increased participation and talent development can help create a larger, more sustainable base for club structures. The study also notes that sport and recreation have a major impact on social development by contributing to health, education, and community safety. Positive social impact can make clubs more attractive to funders and communities as vehicles for positive change. I thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member who posed a question.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I think that was quite a comprehensive answer, but perhaps to focus on policies or investments that can further leverage the possibilities here. Now, what policies or investments would be needed to translate that sporting success into a long-term employment opportunities? And I think it would also be interesting to hear maybe at the national dimension. I don't want to pose a second question, but how can we turn this into a real job creator for the Western Cape?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. And interesting that Honourable Member asked this question because just 2 hours ago, I was in a meeting with one of the biggest telecom providers talking about the exact same thing. And part of the reason why I'm not physically in the house because I'm on my way to a venue 2 hours from here to talk to additional big corporates about how they can get involved in this. Our policy is about partnerships. We cannot do this on our own. But we are a credible government, and that's why partners wants to work with us as a government. What we need to do from a policy level is partner with the private sector, which what I'm actively driving because we don't have the kind of big budgets that our sister colleagues have that my the predecessor talked about. But on a national level, it requires two big policy changes and two big policy shifts, which I did wrote to my national counterparts about. The one is transversal tenders. And I've raised this before in this parliament, and it's not going to go away if I stop talking about it. The one is transversal tenders. Example, right now, I can literally, honourable members, and anyone here can go to our local retailer and buy a soccer ball for 100 Rand, and with 1,000 Rand, you can only buy 10 soccer balls, enabling 10 opportunities. The transversal tender is a centralized procurement system at National Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport. However, the equivalent of that soccer ball is likely to be 300 Rand. That means you can only buy 3 soccer balls, enabling 3 opportunities for young people. So the policy shift require that system to be changed so that provinces get that money and buy them themselves. We obviously in this province, known what we're known for, were likely to buy it and deliver that and create 10 opportunities and young people likely to succeed. The sad reality is I understand the risk of the colleagues of national because the other provinces is unlikely to do that given their past histories. But we are being punished for doing what we do. The second one is the municipal infrastructure grant. Again, there, the centralization and the coordination of that should be sitting with us, and we should be able to get better value, allow us to leverage private sector partners and work with them to get better sport facilities, because municipalities do not have the money to do that because they have other priorities, like my colleagues talked about earlier on as well, and they spoke to their own portfolios, so I can't speak to that. So 2 policy shifts can enable more sustainability, more private sector partners, and more opportunities for people to succeed. Thank you.
On the platform online, I see no additional hands. In the chamber, I see the Honourable Van Minnen.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Now, everything that the Minister has said, I just want to know from him, in terms of national government, is there adequate funding towards club sport in particular to make it more sustainable? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Van Minnen. Definitely not. Unfortunately, not, and definitely not. And the easiest way to do that is through policy changes that require decentralization to ensure provinces have better value for money. Because we all know there's little money, and when there's little money, you're not going to find more money. It requires policy shift at national government to allow provinces to do with the little that they have as they please to ensure club development get more support. At the moment, there's not, sadly so.
I recognize the Honourable Constable.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the MEC talks about the limited funding with regards to MIC. So I just want to pose the question, what is the plans then to make sure that there are additional funding or maybe another kind of grant to support sports facilities and sporting facilities at municipal level? Thank you.
Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that question, Honourable Constable. It's a really great question and really enhanced my thinking also. One is the plans is to partner with private sector partners. Just before I started this Parliament session, I met with a big corporate retailer who's expressed an interest, like they do in other provinces as well, in working with government to see how they can partner with government to help those that are struggling, but that wants to do good. They obviously don't want money to go wasting. The second thing with MIC funding, it requires, in my opinion, certainly a policy shift. We know municipalities has great needs and great priorities: water and electricity, housing, and many other matters that they have to deliver. And now on top of them, we're giving them, expecting them to deliver other facilities such as sports facilities as well. We're saying there is a better way in doing it. Work with provincial departments of sport, allowing them leverage in the policy space so that we who are the custodians of sport as the constitutions can, let's say, take 10 Rand, go to a private partner, say, we've got 10 Rand, work with us on another, give us another 10 Rand, we manage and build the facilities, and if need be, we can rent it out and somebody can make money out of it. At the moment, it's municipal, local government, it gets built, and as we know, municipalities, unfortunately, do not have the operational budget to permanently take care of a facility. They want to, they have a great appetite for it, but they do not because there's great priorities: water, electricity, sewage, housing, that rightfully so municipalities needs to deliver. So it requires a policy thinking, enabling us, those that can and understand national government's concern. Other provinces do not have the capacity, but those that do, allow them to leverage what they have, go out to the market or to the private sector through the appropriate process, obviously, Treasury and Department of Infrastructure, leverage that and help build facilities and let the sports clubs with the private sector manage that better. Slightly similar model is already done by the City of Cape Town through their clubs, where the clubs manage these facilities and the sports bodies take control, wherever the sport bodies in that region is, manage that facility. But you do need a private sector partner on board to obviously look after maintenance and take care of the facility. And there's opportunity there that I think as a country that we must, Honourable Member.
I see no additional indication. Honourable members, previously the Deputy Chief Whip raised a point of order with regards to the next question. I have been informed by the administration that with the commencement of the sitting, the honourable member that posed the question remains a valid member. I now see the Honourable Minister, Minister Wenger.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The Western Cape Department of Health and Wellness is deeply saddened by the passing of baby Lee Hogan Jooste, and we extend our heartfelt condolences, in particular to his mother, Ms. Jooste, and their family during this profoundly difficult time. The loss of a child is an indescribable pain and one we do not wish for any family to experience. In respect of the concerns raised regarding the Delft Community Health Centre, the CHC, the Western Cape Department of Health and Wellness confirms that a patient safety incident investigation was conducted. The investigation established that the healthcare team at the Delft CHC acted immediately and appropriately when the baby was brought in on the 29th of June with severe clinical symptoms, including jaundice, lethargy, and respiratory distress. The baby was provided with respiratory support, intravenous fluids, and phototherapy, and was prepared for urgent transport to Tygerberg Hospital in line with clinical protocols. Baby Jooste was considered stable enough to be transported. Tragically, his condition deteriorated en route, and despite resuscitation efforts, he passed away. Every investigation that we conduct seeks to highlight ways in which systems can be strengthened based on the findings. This is part of the department's efforts to adopt a learning perspective during every investigation, which encourages honesty and reflection when reviewing any incident. It forms part of our larger aim of creating a healthcare system that is compassionate and delivers quality healthcare, and assists the department in identifying the interventions that would strengthen the entire healthcare system and have the greatest impact on patient outcomes. The department has therefore implemented a set of measures to strengthen service delivery at all health facilities. Number one, strengthening staff training and effectiveness. Professional staff are in continuous training and ongoing updates, which are in line with national guidelines for antenatal, postnatal, and neonatal care, with particular emphasis on early detection and management of neonatal jaundice and vertical transmission risks. Functional jaundice is a potential risk for all newborn infants. Mothers are urged to bring the infants to the clinic early for postnatal checks to monitor and to treat accordingly. 2, enhanced antenatal and postnatal testing. Rapid plasma regain RPR tests for syphilis and all relevant checks are routinely conducted by competent staff at each antenatal visit, with strengthened follow-up systems to ensure early detection and intervention. 3, improved patient communication and follow-up. Clearer protocols are being implemented to ensure that families receive adequate postnatal counseling and follow-up support before and after discharge. 4, support for staff and patients. Counseling and debriefing services are available to both the affected family and healthcare workers involved, recognizing the impact of such tragedies. And 5th, monitoring and accountability. Clinical governance processes at all health facilities are ongoing, and strengthening strategies include regular staff audits, case reviews, and management oversight to ensure that lessons learned are embedded into our daily practice. While the Western Cape Department of Health and Wellness is committed to providing safe and quality healthcare, it acknowledges that there are always systemic areas that can be strengthened further. These measures aim to ensure that similar incidents are prevented and that staff effectiveness and patient safety remain at the core of service delivery. Thank you.
I have checked the online. There's no hands. Is there any hands in the house? I see Honorable Van Vogel.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. To the Minister, in respect of so many incidents of staff negligence that has resulted in loss of life, are there any of your staff members that has been held accountable?
Deputy Speaker, there's no staff negligence, so this is a new question.
I see no further questions in this regard. I see the Honourable Van Vogel. If the question is linked to the specific question as printed on the order paper.
Yeah, Deputy Speaker, the Minister mentioned that the child was seriously ill. But why was the child not labeled as a red patient? Can she explain that? Because that's the report. The report was part in it. In the report, it was mentioned the patient was not labeled as a red patient.
Deputy Speaker, so as mentioned, the matter was investigated and it was found that staff acted immediately and appropriately, and they provided respiratory support via CPAP, intravenous fluid and phototherapy, and arranged for immediate transfer to Tygerberg Hospital. So the investigation found that our staff acted appropriately under the circumstances.
I see the Honourable Barnes.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, just one question from my side. I hear that the Minister is saying an investigation was conducted. What I would want to know whether the investigation was an independent investigation or was it an investigation done by the department itself? If so, if the details can be furnished as well. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
A patient safety incident investigation was conducted by credible members of the department. Thank you.
I see the Honourable Nkondlo as the final question in this particular segment.
In the investigation that the Minister is mentioning, what did the investigation expose as the causes of this death, and are these things that would not have been picked up during the postnatal of this particular mother and the child?
Deputy Speaker, I'm not clear on whether I'm allowed to disclose certain information, but I have read the incident report and I have full confidence in the investigation that was conducted. The baby was only a few days old and had presented with very severe clinical symptoms, with breathing problems, jaundice and lethargy. So I think I'll leave it there as the response for understandable reasons. Thank you.
Honourable members, that concludes question number 5. I recognize the Honourable Seleku. Honourable Nkondlo.
Yes, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Before you move on the partial response of the Minister, can I just check with you in a case where, as the Minister says, she's not sure if she could divulge, because the question is being asked and she answered, whether she can then further, once she can ascertain if she can divulge, further send a written response to fully answer my question.
Honourable Nkondlo, I have not personally heard that the Minister makes such undertaking in the House, but I will remind all honourable members of their powers and privileges in asking additional written questions. I see the Minister, Minister Seleku.
Sekela Somlomo, mandibulele ngombuzo. But before ndiphendule umbuzo, benzawuthanda nje udlulisa amazwi emvelwano kumalungu traffic law enforcement. Ngoba kule veki sikuyo
siyasahlelwa lilifu elimnyama ukuthi siphulukane ne-traffic officer eye yathatha ubomi bayo apha evekini. Then okwesibini ke siyasaphulukana nomuntu okokuqala wayi-traffic
Sorry.
officer.
Honorable Minister, please take your seat.
It doesn't appear to be English translation.
The table staff will engage and confirm the relevant audio number. Honorable members, this is a key question. The clock has been stopped.
Yeah.
The
No,
clock will be stopped.
My apologies, Deputy Chair. Firstly, I would just want to thank our member Aaron for the question. But just for his own benefit, I just wanted to convey our sincere condolences to the families of the two members of the traffic law enforcement fraternity, because this week has been a very difficult week for us. We've lost one young individual who was a traffic officer in Mossel Bay Traffic Center when he took his own life. And secondly, we also lost another member who started as a traffic officer but ended up as an administrator for 20 years. But for her, it was based on ill health. And so this week on Saturday, we will be burying those two individuals, at their final resting place. And I'm also very grateful for the question, because this question would allow us also to share what is it that we are doing and maybe some of the challenges that we are confronted with when we are doing our role and responsibility in making sure that some of our roads are actually safe.
The audio number 2, number 4, is it number 6? Number 6, Honorable Aaron. I see so, but I think he was going to go. Honorable Saleko, please continue.
Okay.
So question.
Honorable Speaker, in the past 3 months alone, 300 people have lost their lives on our provincial roads. That is an average of 100 lives every month. Of these, 167 were pedestrians, more than half of the total number. Passengers accounted to 68 deaths, drivers 41, and motorcyclists 20. And when we examine crash types, 156 were pedestrian knockdowns. These are not just numbers. Each one represents a mother, a father who will never hold their child again, a child who has lost a parent, a breadwinner who will never return home. Each represents a family plunged into grief, a community left to mourn, and a life story cut tragically short. Honorable Deputy Speaker, we cannot allow these tragedies to become routine. Every death is a reminder of our shared vulnerability and of our urgent responsibility to have to one another on our roads. Our thoughts are with the families affected, and our commitment must be to honor these lives by becoming numb to the suffering behind these statistics. On part 2, Honorable Deputy Speaker, at this stage, verified figures are not yet available. When a crash occurs, preliminary information comes from the witness statements, and SAPS then opens a culpable homicide case, reconstructs the scene, and collects blood samples. Due to forensic backlogs, these results can take to 6 to 12 months or longer before the courts confirm culpability. But while the legal process runs its course, we are not waiting to act. Traffic officers are actively targeting these behaviors through random breath tests, speed enforcement operations, and high visibility roadblocks. Alongside these enforcement efforts, we implement a broad range of interventions to change behavior and raise awareness. Central to this is a Road Safety Ambassador program, which deploys ambassadors across the province, with the bulk of them sitting in high-risk areas such as Mbekweni and Thembalethu. These ambassadors lead community education and school-based programs, assist learners, guide pedestrians, and engage with public transport users and operators, complementing enforcement and in reinforcing safe road behavior. Honorable Deputy Speaker, road safety is urgent and requires collective effort. Government enforces and educates, drivers must obey the law, and pedestrians must remain vigilant. Only by working together every day in every community can we turn these tragedies into lives saved. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. With 1 minute and 5 seconds, I see the member who posed the question.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for the question. The department implements the Safely Home project, which implements the World Health Organization's World Report on Road Traffic Injuries, which has a number of essential steps to improve road safety. Can the Minister advise or share with us how the department is implementing, or which steps the department is implementing from that World Health Report?
Deputy Speaker, thank you very much. Thank you, Deputy Speaker, for that particular question. Firstly, Deputy Speaker, I would just want to share with the member, in terms of the efforts from the side of mobility, we all have been renowned for having static operations. And we have moved away from having static operations, and we are more focused on having visibility on our roads. And we were able to see a decline in terms of our numbers. Because if I have to share the stats in terms of the decline in our numbers, during our festive season, we have seen a decline of 15.24 decline.
Honorable Minister, please conclude. We have reached the end of question time.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Our standing rules are very specific. Honorable members, we have reached the end of question time. Outstanding replies will be printed in Hansard. Members, in terms of Rule 145, there will now be an opportunity for member statements. And as per the sequence in the rules, I recognize the Democratic Alliance.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, the remarkable achievements of our young innovators at the ESCOM Expo for Young Scientists West Coast Regional Science Affair, held on 7 August 2025 at the White City Multipurpose Centre in Saldanha Bay, highlight how the Western Cape government employs a whole-of-society approach to address the province's challenges. Government alone cannot solve all the issues our communities face. Collaborations across schools, parents, volunteers, and the private sector is essential to move our province forward. This year, 129 young scientists from grade 4 to 12, as well as TVET students from NCV level 2 to level 4, showcased 85 projects demonstrating creativity, critical thinking, and innovative solutions to real-world challenges facing South Africa. The fair highlighted the extraordinary talent of our young learners across multiple categories. Social sciences was the most popular, with 23 entries, followed by energy, engineering, and chemistry and biochemistry. During the award ceremony, excellence in research and innovation was recognized with 13 gold, 25 silver, and 47 bronze medals. ESCOM honored outstanding young scientists with special awards, including Ziwa Engelbrecht and Ovayo Somshlalo from grade 7 at Yuri Hayes Primary School, who received the Best Female Award. Duran Farmer from grade 9 at Vredendal High School was awarded Best Development. Davi Bierman from grade 9 at Swartland High School, who received Best Energy, and Tian Lamminga from grade 10 at Kiro Langebaan, who was recognized with Best Innovation Award. Honourable Deputy Speaker, events like these are vital. They nurture curiosity, inspire creativity, and equip our learners with the skill and confidence to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and innovation. I extend my warm congratulations to all the learners, educators, parents, volunteers, and judges who contributed to the success of this event. Let us continue to support our young scientists, ensuring that South Africa's future remains bright, innovative, and full of opportunity. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now Recognize the Honorable ANC.
Deputy Speaker, every missing gun is a life at risk. We demand accountability for the 31 missing firearms in the city of Cape Town. Given this theme, today I rise to expose a crisis that continues to engulf working class communities in our province. The scourge of violence crime driven by the proliferation of illegal firearms on our streets, now entrenched as a weapon of choice. The scant attention this neoliberal DA and the bourgeois media afford to this crisis is deafening, and or perhaps it will only matter once the elite are directly affected. Members, if urgent action is not taken, Cape Town risks descending into a state resembling that of Colombia or Mexico, where places where violence and impunity rule. In this province, it is the majority black working class who live under siege, even as the DA government spends millions of rands annually with no meaningful improvement in safety. Evidence shows that at the heart of serious violent crimes in the Western Cape, be it murders or attempted murders, illegal firearms are constantly the weapon of choice. This fuels the persistent bloodshed in black townships week in, week out. Against this background, we call on the DA-led government to repurpose public resources strategically, not mere to contain crime, but to tackle the root causes, particularly the proliferation of illegal firearms. Speaker, despite commendable efforts by the police, including raids, searches of firearm seizures, the challenge remains daunting. A key obstacle is the inability to trace the origins of many of these. However, we do know that the October 2022 Firearms Compliance Audit Report revealed that the city of Cape Town had failed to account for about 31 firearms following the amalgamation of the city of Cape Town municipality and local municipalities. This is not a clerical oversight. This is a DA governance failure. Therefore, we demand full accountability and immediate action. Finally, given
Honorable
this
Member, your time is
I
expired.
dare say that the DA government is complicit in the proliferation of illegal guns in the city of Cape Town. Given
Your
the
time has
31
expired,
guns, which
Honorable
still
Provincial.
today you have
Your time
not
is
yet
up.
accounted.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
I now recognize the PA.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, the day before yesterday, we learned of the attack on 3 members of parliament from the Democratic Alliance who were victims of what is alleged to have been a smash and grab while conducting oversight in Philippi, Cape Town. This incident is deeply concerning, not only because it targeted public representatives, but because it reflects a harsh reality that ordinary residents of the city of Cape Town face on a daily basis. The Cape Flats in particular has become synonymous with violent crimes, gangsterism, and lawlessness. This attack highlights once again the urgent need for increased law enforcement presence, especially in areas identified as crime hotspots. It is imperative that both the South African police services and local law enforcement structures coordinate more effectively to restore safety and dignity to the communities that are under siege. We are losing lives daily to ongoing violence on the Cape Flats, and this matter can no longer be swept under the carpet or ignored. The Patriotic Alliance therefore calls on the provincial government to intervene decisively and urgently to ensure the safety of the people. I thank you.
I recognize the DA.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, allow me to address the serious allegations which were made in this House recently regarding the Swellendam municipality. It was claimed in this House, without evidence, that whistleblowers are being intimidated after exposing alleged tender fraud. These allegations, raised by the Honourable Syed of the ANC, demand a factual response. The Swellendam municipality has a fully compliant anti-corruption and fraud prevention policy by which whistleblowers are protected and not persecuted. And this is a principle clearly unfamiliar to the ANC. But protection for whistleblowers does not mean immunity from accountability, especially where there's evidence of wrongdoing. I'm referring to the matter where a senior supply chain official was placed on precautionary suspension after a direct payment from a service provider appeared in his personal bank account with no plausible explanation. A criminal case has been opened and disciplinary action is underway. And that's not intimidation, Deputy Speaker, it's simply due process. Information has come to light indicating that the service provider at the center of these issues is allegedly operating in other municipalities as well, with possible links to councillors and other political parties. Speaker, it's irresponsible for members of this House, possibly. Speaker, it's irresponsible for members of this House to use untested allegations to distract from the facts. And if there is further information that's been provided to MPs, then this must be shared with the investigators. So let's not confuse the pursuit of accountability with political point scoring. I urge this House to allow the relevant authorities to do their work and to base our debates on facts and not fiction. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
I recognize the honorable. I recognize the EFF. I recognize the EFF. I recognize the NCC. I see the ANC. I recognize the African National Congress. I recognize the African National Congress. I recognize the Democratic Alliance.
Yeah, it's about the victory in Matsikama. Agbare Speaker, vandag staan ek trots op in hierdie huis om die nuus te deel dat die Demokratiese Alliansie Wijk 7 in Matsikama behou het tydens die tussenverkiesing wat gister gehou is. Dit was 'n uiters belangrike tussenverkiesing met 'n keuse tussen die DA se veldtog om Matsikama se munisipaliteit reg te ruk en 'n toekoms van agteruitgang onder die jarelange speletjies van kaders. Hierdie tussenverkiesingsuitslag verteenwoordig verder die hoogste aantal DA-stemme sedert 2016 wat in Wijk 7 opgeteken is. Dit spreek boekdele. Dit bevestig dat die mense van Matsikama die politiek van chaos, korrupsie en ontwrigting verwerp en eerder integriteit, stabiliteit en mensediens verkies. Ons wil ons gelukwense oordra aan die nuutverkose raadslid Richard van Huisteen. Ons is vol vertroue dat hy sodra hy ingesweer is, 'n toegewyde openbare verteenwoordiger sal wees vir die DA se nalatenskap van goeie regering en dienslewering wat vir almal werk sal voortsit. Speaker, hierdie oorwinning volg kort op 'n ander DA sukses, toe die howe tereg die onwettige en komiese poging tot 'n staatsgreep van die ANC, PA en EFF koalisie in Matsikama gestop het met 'n kostebevel, persoonlike kostebevel. Die hof het homself uitgespreek, maar daarna het die mense hulle self ook uitgespreek. Die oppergesag van die reg sal in die Wes-Kaap seëvier en die wil van die mense sal seëvier. Laastens wil ek ons toegewyde openbare verteenwoordigers en hardwerkende aktiviste bedank. Julle pogings was van kardinale belang in hierdie belangrike oorwinning. Die blou masjien het die groen en geel golf teruggedraai. Die DA bly die baken van hoop, nie net vir Matsikama nie, maar vir alle Suid-Afrikaners wat na 'n beter toekoms streef. Ek dank u.
I recognize the African National Congress. I recognize the Freedom Front Plus.
Honourable Speaker, the Freedom Front Plus welcomes the review of the safety plan as announced by the Premier today. We want to remind this House that the Western Cape Minister of Safety, former Minister Dan Plato, launched the walking bus initiative way back in 2016, and many schools were involved. Parents were involved in ensuring the safety of children as they walk to school and back. Now, when that project was handed over to the city of Cape Town, it was rendered as unsustainable and abruptly ended. Speaker, as part of the safety plan review process, we asked that the Western Cape government would review this particular initiative and remodel it so that it can be reincorporated as part of ensuring safety for our children. There were many positives that came from these initiatives. It prevented child kidnapping. It kept parents involved, and it entrenched a spirit of collective effort in safeguarding all our citizens and young children. Speaker, we want to thank you, the Premier, for reviewing the safety plan and giving consideration to this request, and to look at data, as the Premier is quite focused on data-proven facts before taking decisions. And on behalf of the Freedom Front Plus, I want to thank him and the Western Cape government that this will be given consideration.
I recognize. Thank you, Honourable Member. I recognize Al Jamaa.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Al-Jamaa, no, we have no statement today. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Brinkhuis. I recognize the African National Congress.
Thank you, Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the ANC rises today to set the record straight. The Democratic Alliance, together with its right-wing coalition partners, AfriForum and Solidarity, must take full responsibility for the punitive 30% tariffs imposed by the United States on South African products. Unprovoked, these unpatriotic parties traveled to Washington not to defend our nation, not to protect South African workers, but to actively lobby against our democratically elected government. They mobilized foreign powers to impose sanctions on our leaders, and in doing so, directly invited economic retaliation against our country. That, Honorable Deputy Speaker, is nothing short of treason. Now, in a cynical act of a political spin, the DA seeks to blame the national government, claiming it failed to negotiate a better deal. But no revisionist narrative can disguise the fact that it was the DA and its allies who sold out sovereignty, undermined our economy, and betrayed our people. Already, Deputy Speaker, the consequences are being felt. Agriculture in the Western Cape is bleeding jobs at an alarming rate, contributing the highest losses nationally. Farmers, farm workers, and rural communities are paying the price for the DA's reckless betrayal and dangerous politics of sabotage. Through their racist fear-mongering and anti-transformation propaganda, the DA and its right-wing coalition have cost our nation dearly. History will judge them harshly. They did not stand with the people of South Africa. They stood against them. Yet, amidst this turmoil, the national government has acted decisively and responsibly. On the 12th of August 2025, Cabinet announced a 5-pillar response, which includes continued engagement with the United States to secure a better deal and reduce tariffs, including submitting a revised offer responsive to the U.S. concerns. 2, urgent measures to assist vulnerable companies and workers, complemented by proactive export diversification to
Honourable
alternate
Barnes,
markets.
please conclude.
Speaker, we on the side of the House welcome the interventions of national government. They reflect the commitment on the national government to safeguard jobs, protect livelihoods, and shield our production of capacity from external shocks. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Barnes. I recognize the ACDP.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, last week I had an oral question to Minister Mania, and Minister Mania then replied in writing because the time ran out. And the question I asked was, how many parents have A, accepted placement for their children at allocated schools, and B, not accepted placement for children at allocated schools as at the latest date for which information is available. So Minister Mayenia gave that reply. But Speaker, I am still extremely concerned when I read in the media the oversubscription of schools for grade R, 1 and 8. The Portfolio Committee on Basic Education has requested the Western Cape Education Department to provide a demographic profile of the 11,341 applicants who has lots of appeals to date. And this appeals for grade R1, 8 and 8 is open till the 31st of August. So Speaker, Deputy Speaker, it seems that we're sitting with many appeals. Some parents are saying they've tried at so many schools and were rejected. One parent said that they must walk past their one school to go to another school where they were accepted. So I just want to know from the minister, when we read this in the paper and we see the oversubscribing of grade R1 and 8 at schools, in which areas are they? Is it in the poorer areas, the marginalized areas? Where does this number lay? The 11,341. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Christians. The time has expired, Honorable Noko Masipa. I recognize the good party.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, amid a well-documented budget crisis, the Western Cape Government, City of Cape Town and Border Management Authority have unveiled a new plan for tourists' arrivals. Premier Alan Winde assures us that these young men and women will not only give operations a boost, they will serve as ambassadors for our province. Tourism is important and visitors bring in revenue and support local businesses. But what is not explained is how government suddenly finds money to make the tourist immigration experience smoother, while ordinary South Africans' pleas for basic services are ignored. Cape Town and the Western Cape are beautiful places, but they remain deeply unequal. Tourists whisked from the airport to hotels and Ubers may never experience the informal settlements that they drive past. But the people who live there, the same workers who get up at 4 a.m. to clean hotels, cook meals and serve tourists, don't have that luxury. They navigate sewage-filled streets, broken streetlights and dangerous commutes. That is their daily reality. The Immigration Act and the policing laws make no mention of these assistant border control officers or law enforcement officers of this kind. So what exactly are these so-called ambassadors, and where do they get their powers from? Based on little we know, their role seems to be limited to speeding up the immigration queues. Is that really the best use of public money? Meanwhile, there is never enough money for teachers or nurses, and we've just heard properly funded social services. But suddenly, when it comes to making life easier for wealthy tourists, money appears. This is not governance, Deputy Speaker, in the public interest. This is a province that cares, but only if you're a rich tourist. Thank you.
I recognize the DA.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, the Democratic Alliance in the Western Cape condemns the brazen attack on members of Parliament in Philippi on Tuesday, 19 August 2025. This shocking incident is an attack on elected representatives who sought to strengthen safety measures through robust and meaningful oversight to keep all our communities safe. It is also an assault on the very foundations of our democracy. Speaker, it forces us to ask the urgent question: what safety is guaranteed for South Africans? Before I proceed, I do want to emphasize that the way in which the South African police services responded to this incident is the kind of policing that everybody deserves. The reality is that the only universal experience in South Africa is our vulnerability to crime, with a common denominator being the inefficacy of SAPS, a plight that has fallen on deaf ears for far too long. The truth is stark. South Africans are living under siege. Violent crime is rampant. Communities are terrorized daily, and confidence in the South African police service has all but collapsed. SAPS is failing in its most basic constitutional mandate to protect and serve. Criminals act with impunity, knowing there will be little to no consequences for their actions. If members of parliament can be attacked so brazenly, then who amongst us is truly safe? Mothers on their way to work, children on their way to school. The very people we represent are abandoned by a state that cannot guarantee their security. That is why we must urgently pursue the devolution of policing powers, empowering provinces and capable metros to protect our own communities where national government has repeatedly failed. As we have done before and will continue to do until we win this fight for every South African, we demand urgent accountability, proper resourcing of SAPS, and an end to empty promises. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Van Minen. Honorable members, in terms of Rule 145. Honorable members, in terms of Rule 145(6), I now give one or more members of the executive an opportunity, should they wish so, to reply collectively for not more than 5 minutes. Do I see any members? I see the Honorable Minister Meinier.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Just on the questions raised by the Honourable Furlong Christians. Yes, of course, our system is under very significant admission pressure. But to provide some perspective on the appeals to which he referred, the number of appeals is about 1.4% of the total number of admission and transfer applications. And of course, also, it's important to realize that because a parent has lodged an appeal does not necessarily mean that the learner has not been placed. And finally, it's important to note that the question or the appeals to which he referred relate to the 2025 school year, not the 2026 school year. And then finally, to the Honourable Peter Johnson, thank you so much for drawing the House's attention to the ESCOM Expo for Young Scientists. I had the privilege yesterday to spend some time with our young scientists engaging on their projects, which included one project measuring the rate at which the universe is expanding, believe it or not. And it was a morning spent and a wonderful reminder of the incredible talent being developed by our schools. And it was also a reminder of what is, in fact, working in our education system here in the Western Cape. Thank you.
I see no additional hands. That concludes member statements. In terms of Rule 151, all notices of motions by members are required to be delivered to the Secretary for placing it on the order paper. These motions have been duly submitted and published on the order paper below the line. We proceed in terms of Rule 150. In terms of Rule 150, I would like to inform members that in terms of the Standing Rule 150 pertaining to motions without notice, condolences and congratulatory were submitted to the Programming Authority prior to the plenary on the 19th of August 2025. Members are also reminded that motions without notice pertaining to congratulatory and condolences will not be allowed in this sitting that have not been processed by the Programming Authority. I have been informed that the Programming Authority meeting on the 19th of August 2025, political parties submitted the names of honourable members in the desired order of speaking and who had wished to move a motion without notice in the sitting of the House. I will therefore, just for noting and for the purposes of the minutes, call out the honourable member's name, whose names have accordingly been submitted and approved. The following members' motions have been approved by the Programming Authorities as follows: the Honourable Wessels, the Honourable Van Wyk, the Honourable Van Minen, again the Honourable Van Minen, the Honourable Nkwensu, the Honourable Barnes, the Honourable Stoffel, and the Honorable Dekker. I now put motions duly submitted and approved by the Programming Authority to the House. Are there any objections? There's no objections. It's agreed to. The motions will appear in the minutes of proceedings and in Hansard in each individual member's name as if that member read out the motion aloud. I will now afford the opportunity for members to move motions without notice as per Standing Rule 150 subsection 3D. This could include motions without notice that were not approved in the Programming Authority. Honourable members, the clock has been set. We have a 30-minute time period for 17 motions. I recognize the Honourable Stevens.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I hereby move without notice that this House notes with deep concern the escalating gang violence in Vasantakral, Cape Town, where residents are living in constant fear due to the reign of terror inflicted by criminal gangs. That this House further notes the absence of adequate policing in the area, as there is no functioning police station, and the current mobile police station is more often closed than open, rendering it ineffective and of no assistance to the community. That this House expresses its dismay that the South African Police Service has failed to adequately respond to repeated reports of shootings and criminal activity, leaving residents vulnerable, unable to even access basic services such as affidavits, and fearful of leaving their homes. That this House conveys its heartfelt condolences to the family of the late Jonathan Africa, aged 26, who was brutally shot and killed this past weekend, as well as to the families of Shelton, aged 24, and the 14-year-old boy, both of whom tragically lost their lives in the past 2 weeks due to gang violence. That this House calls on the Provincial Minister of Police Oversight and Community Safety to urgently intervene and ensure that proper policing structures and resources are established in Vasantakral, so that the residents may once again live in safety and without fear. I so move.
Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There's no objections. Agreed to. I see the Honourable Nkwensu. Oh, honourable members, if your mic is still on, if you can put it off, you may proceed.
I move without notice that the House notes with concern the attempted robbery of 3 DA members of Parliament, Ian Cameron, Godsell, Lisa, during their oversight visit to the Police Training Academy in Philippi, extends well wishes to them for a speedy recovery and expresses hope that they receive the necessary support following their traumatic incident, recognizing that this traumatic experience is tragically common for the black working class in a DA-led province, who live under the constant threat of crime and violence due to DA failures, affirms that the crime affects all South Africans regardless of race, political affiliation,
Honourable
believe that the DA-led
Nkwensu, Honourable Nkwensu, can you take your seat? I see the Honourable Masipa.
Honorable Speaker, I'm wondering why is the Speaker repeating the same message over and over?
In terms of our parliamentary rules, Hansard is appropriately captured via the microphone and his microphone was off. Please conclude, Member Nkwensu.
You would not know, farm manager. The DLA provincial government should take full responsibility given its failures to prioritize working class communities. Calls for intensified efforts to ensure communities most affected by crime are not only resourced and supported but developed so that working class youth are not found in criminal activities and recruited into gangs. I so move.
Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There's an objection. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I again see the Honorable Nkwensu.
It is I move without notice that this House notes and strongly condemns the shocking violence in the Western Cape, where 26 people were killed in just 1 week. As reported in August 2025, this bloodshed is unacceptable and has caused fear and devastation in our communities. Further notes with grave concern that these senseless killings are not isolated incidents, but are rooted in a deep structural failures of the provincial government to address the causative factors of violent crime, including poverty, unemployment, poor spatial planning, and that entrenches inequality, the proliferation of illegal firearms, and easy access to ammunition. All these remain unchecked with no dedicated government program to intervene decisively. Acknowledges that the so-called Western Cape Safety Plan is once more exposed as a big and expensive failure that has not made our communities safer and calls for urgent, comprehensive, and people-centered interventions to address the root causes of crime, to strengthen policing, and to protect our communities from further devastation. I so move.
Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There's an objection. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I again see the Honorable. Do I again see the Honorable Nkwensu?
Thank you very much, Mamela Namhlanje. I move without notice that this House note with deep concern the tragic incident of newly born babies being dumped in Kraaifontein following the recent discovery of one infant in a dustbin and another on the streets of Blogombos. Further notes the ongoing scourge of violent crimes against women, including the recent horrific incident in the new rest quarter camp in Kraaifontein, where a 60-year-old man allegedly set a shack alight, resulting in the death of 58-year-old woman and a child. Observe with alarm that these incidents are taking place during Women's Month, a period dedicated to reflecting on the rights, dignity, and safety of women and children. Calls on the broader community of Kraaifontein, with the support of this House, to unite with local public reps, Member Nglensi, Ward Councillor Nodliwa, Ward Councillor Duka, in addressing the root causes and circumstances that give rise to such tragedies. Invite this House to support the upcoming Imbizo on 23 August 2025 to be led by Deputy Minister Dr. Poli as a vital platform for community engagement. Awareness and mobilization acknowledges that while the Imbizo may not in itself be a panacea for these heartbreaking incidents and the broader scourge of violence, it remains an important community-driven platform for dialogue, participation, and the collective pursuit of sustainable and preventative solutions. I so move, Chair.
Are there any objections with the motion being moved without notice? There's an objection. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I recognize the Honorable Van Vogel. My apologies, Member Van Vogel. I again recognize the Honorable Member Nkwensu.
Yeah. Okay. Deputy Speaker, I move without notice that this House notes with deep concern the unacceptable condition of the KwaNokuthula police station in Platte, characterized by the absence of proper infrastructure, which has resulted in severe office overcrowding. Further notes that these inadequate facilities not only subject police officers to inhuman and unsafe working conditions, but also endanger officers, witnesses, and committee members, particularly during interviews and examinations. Acknowledges that the land on which the police station is currently located is owned by the Bureau local municipality, calls on the provincial government the police service, and the Bito local municipality to urgently enter into a cooperative agreement to identify and release suitable land, paving the way for the construction of a fully functional and modern police precinct. Further acknowledges that the provincial government must demonstrate the real and tangible support for policing, not only through operations, but also through infrastructure investment and comprehensive community safety initiatives. I so move. Permanent.
Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice?
Objections being brought without notice.
I see there's an objection. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I recognize the Honorable Van Vogel.
I move without notice that this House warmly applauds the timely, compassionate collaboration between the humanitarian organization, Gift of the Givers, and the South African Police Service, SAPS, Eden Cluster District in launching a concrete campaign to combat gender-based violence in the garden during Women's Month, and notes with appreciation that the campaign, which began on the 18th August 2025 across 5 SAP stations, will be extended to include Ladysmith, Calitzdorp, Oudtshoorn, Uniondale, Knysna, Plettenberg Bay, Mossel Bay, Riversdale, and Heidelberg, and acknowledges the meaningful impact of distributing over 2,500 dignity packs to women in need, supply sanitary towels to 41 schools, and running community-based awareness programs to educate and empower affected residents. Further commends the innovative all-woman team, roadblocks held by female SAPS officers and volunteers who engage directly with women drivers, offering token of appreciation and solidarity. We believe this initiative serves as a potent symbol of hope, safety, and unity, bringing the garden route to life in green, blue, and pink in support of women everywhere. I so move.
Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There's no objections. Agreed to. I recognize the Honorable Barnes. I recognize the Honorable Barnes.
Thank you, Speaker. I move without notice that this House notes with concern the sexual harassment case involving a prominent Cape Town lawyer, which is to be heard in secret by the Legal Practice Council, as reported on the 17th August 2025. Further notes that while confidentiality may protect complaints, the secrecy of such proceedings raises serious questions about transparency, accountability, and the public's trust in legal profession, condemns any culture of silence or impunity that allows powerful individuals to evade scrutiny, and calls on the Legal Practice Council and all legal institutions to ensure that allegations of sexual harassment are investigated thoroughly, fairly, and in a manner that upholds justice, protects victims, and restores public confidence in the rule of law. I so move, Deputy Speaker.
Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There's no objections. Agreed to. I again recognize the Honorable Barnes.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that this House condemns in the strongest terms the recent shooting of a Stellenbosch municipal official at his home in Kayamnandi. Marking the third such incident in 4 months, expresses deep concern over the escalating pattern of targeted violence against municipal employees, including the tragic killings of former Deputy Mayor Nyaniso Chindela and Councillor Xolile Khalipa earlier this year. Calls for immediate and decisive action from the South African Police Services to investigate these attacks, apprehend the perpetrators, and ensure the safety of all public servants. Urges the Western Cape Provincial Government to implement comprehensive measures to protect municipal officials and address the root causes of such violence, and reaffirms the commitment to upholding the rule of law and the safety of all citizens in the province. I so move, Deputy Speaker.
Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There's no objections. Agreed to. I recognize the Honorable Nkondlo.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that this House notes with concern the sexual harassment case involving a prominent Cape Town lawyer, which is to be heard in secret by the Legal Practice Council, as reported on the 17th August 2025. Further notes that while confidentiality may protect complaints, the secrecy of such proceedings raises serious questions about transparency, accountability, and the public's trust in legal profession, condemns any culture of silence or impunity that allows powerful individuals to evade scrutiny, and calls on the Legal Practice Council and all legal institutions to ensure that allegations of sexual harassment are investigated thoroughly, fairly, and in a manner that upholds justice, protects victims, and restores public confidence in the rule of law. I so move, Deputy Speaker.
Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? I recognize the Honorable Nkondlo. I see the Honorable Syed.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that this House supports the National Day of Action taking place in Tshwane, Durban, and Cape Town under the theme of Stop All Trade to Israel, calling for an immediate end to all coal being sold to apartheid Israel amidst the Gaza genocide. Further notes that the Western Cape exports over 195 million rand worth of fresh grapes to Israel annually. Notes that in line with the DA's express support for the Israeli occupation and the denial of a genocide in Gaza, the provincial government has maintained and facilitated these trade relations. Expresses concern that such trade may indirectly support activities contrary to South Africa's foreign policy stance and international obligations, and calls on Premier Windi to review and to assess the implications of continued trade with Israel, considering the broader political context and the province's stated commitment to human rights and international laws. I so move.
Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I again recognize the Honorable Syed.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that this House notes the 42nd anniversary of the launch of the United Democratic Front on the 20th of August 1983 at the Rockland Civic Centre in Mitchell's Plain. Further notes that the UDF, born in the Western Cape, united civic, labour, youth, women's, faith-based and community organizations into a powerful movement against apartheid, keeping alive the vision of a democratic, non-racial, non-sexist South Africa. Acknowledges that the UDF's founding values of inclusivity, unity, grassroots mobilization are as vital today as they were 4 decades ago, especially in confronting inequality, exclusion, and division in our province, and therefore calls on civil society, political formations, and communities to draw inspiration from the UDF's legacy and to work together in building an inclusive Western Cape that embodies unity, justice, and democracy as a foundation for an inclusive South Africa. As the UDF was born here in the Western Cape, so too must the dream of an inclusive Western Cape be realized here for the unity of our province and the renewal of our democracy.
Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is no objections. Agreed to. I recognize the Honorable Barnes.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. On behalf of the ANC, I move that the House notes the 36th anniversary of the brutal assassination of anti-apartheid activist and freedom fighter, Comrade Dalsie September, who was gunned down on the 29th of March 1988 in France, Paris, while serving as the ANC's chief representative to France, Switzerland, and Luxembourg. The House recalls that Comrade Dalsie September was born on August 20th, 1935 in Athlone, Cape Town, and would have turned 90 years old yesterday, had her life not been cut short by apartheid assassins. The House further recalls that Comrade Dalsie September dedicated her life to the struggle for freedom, justice, and human rights. She was fearless leader of the liberation movement, a teacher, a community organizer, and a principled revolutionary who stood firmly against apartheid and exposed the regime's secret arms deals and human rights violations. The House further notes that her assassination remains unresolved to this day, and justice has been denied to her family, comrades, and the people of South Africa. Her death symbolizes both the brutality of apartheid regime and the unfinished work of accountability for crimes committed against freedom fighters. The House therefore honors the life and the sacrifice of Comrade Dalsie September salutes her contribution to the struggle for a free, non-racial, non-sexist, and democratic South Africa, and recommits to carrying forward her legacy by defending democracy, advancing social justice, and demanding full truth and accountability for her assassination. I so move, Deputy Speaker.
Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There's no objections. Agreed to. I recognize the Honorable Lekker. I recognize the Honorable Lekker. I see the Honorable Nkondlo. I see the Honorable Stoffels.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I move without notice that the House notes and congratulates the African National Congress for its decisive victory in Ward 3 by-election in Knysna, where the ANC candidate Kade Lukhanyiso Nhova secured 1,074 votes, notes further that the victory is not only a triumph for the ANC, but also a reaffirmation of the people's confidence in the African National Congress as the true custodian of their hopes, struggles, and aspirations, and acknowledge the tireless efforts of the African National Congress members, branches, and volunteers who work with dedication to ensure his victory. I so move.
Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I recognize the Honorable Van Minen.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I bring a motion without notice that this House condemns in the strongest possible terms the recent attacks on children, which have shocked our communities and violated the most vulnerable. We note with deep concern a newborn found dead in a waste bin in Kraaifontein, alleged sexual offences against a 15-year-old by a community leader in the Helderberg, the violent death of an 11-year-old child, a deliberate fire in Wallisdean that killed 3 people, including a child. This House stands with the victims, survivors, and families affected and urges all community leaders, civil society, and religious institutions to protect children and vulnerable members of society, strengthen moral responsibility, act decisively against criminal elements in our communities. The safety of our children is an imperative duty, and we must act with courage and urgency. We will not stand for any attempt to politicize these incidents, but rather play our oversight role robustly in the interest of every resident in our province. I so move. I thank you.
Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There's no objections. Agreed to. I again recognize the Honorable Van Minen.
Deputy Speaker, I move without notice that this House notes the brutal Lotus River shooting, which claimed 1 life and left 4 injured, and the shocking tally of 26 murders in just 1 week in the Western Cape. But these tragedies expose not isolated incidents, but a crisis of violent crime fueled by the glaring failure of SAPs of a national government to uphold their constitutional duty to protect our people. In contrast, the Western Cape government continues to strengthen safety efforts despite attempts by the opposition to politicize these tragedies. This House therefore calls on SAPs and the prosecuting authorities to act with urgency, professionalism, and the full weight of the law to deliver swift justice. I so move. I thank you.
Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There's an objection. The motion will be printed on the order paper. Honorable members, that concludes the business of the day. The secretary and table staff will now end the meeting and all members will be exited from the sitting. The House is adjourned.